As the mayor of the town of Clayton, I'd like to call this regular town council meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. I ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Most gracious and heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the many blessings of this day. And we ask, Lord, now that you be with us as we proceed with the business for the town of Clayton. For it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
No, thank you.
All right. No adjustments, then we'll move on to consent agenda.
Motion to approve agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. All right. Up next under special presentation will be the 2022 Art Sculpture Trail.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff. Appreciate being here tonight. Very excited about showing you the new sculptures. This happens every March, and it's happening on, actually they're going in on March 25th. We had a selection panel on January 25th. I want to thank Michael Sims for representing the council on that. We had 73 entries from 12 different states. And the selection committee, they had a little bit of a hard job. We had to take it down to 49 because they could never have done all 73 with that amount of time. But we were able to take out the ones that were very similar to ones we've had before. Some of them were actually ones that we had before, and some would not have been fitting at all. We like conversation, but we don't always like that kind of conversation. But anyway, we have a really interesting and fun group of sculptures this year. I think everyone on the panel, I think, was looking for something very positive. So I think you're going to see some fun things. And we have a couple pieces that are probably going to be talked about, but that's what we look for. The committee is charged with not thinking just what they see for themselves and thinking, oh, that's what I want, but they have to represent everybody in the community. And also they have to take into consideration that even though they may hate it, that might be somebody's favorite piece. So, and we have new sculptors from different states, so that's a good sign. That's very nice. And so in here I'm going to tell you what they are, and I'm going to show you where the placement is. We've worked with Public Works, and they have assured us these are the best places for these. So in the town square, we have, the first one is malachite, Voyager, and it's got, malachite is a form of copper. I had to look that one up. I wasn't sure. It's been a long while since my art days, and that's, that piece is 9 feet, 9.5 feet, and that is quite a stunning piece, and especially when the sun will hit it, that's going to be really lovely. Now that will be in the place where, right now, where I'm thinking it's going to be right by the light there, at the light, that where people will be able to see it and things will be shining out. The next piece is going to be, this is called Process. Now, the other one, the Voyager, he's a new artist. We have a new guy from New York. So along with Jack Potter, who has also been chosen again for this year, we have a brand new one. And this one is Christian Happel. And now Christian has, his piece is sitting right now out at the community center. He will be picking that up. And we have 2 of his pieces that were chosen this year. But this little guy is, he has a solar little panel on the top of his head, so his head lights up at night. So, and then it represents the ideas that we get in creating pieces. And so, and his little red that he's got in there represents his interaction with the piece. So that's going to be a big one. Now that's 10 feet. That one will go where the big red sculpture is, Rob Thornson's sculpture is right now in Town Square. Next one, in Horne Square. Okay, now, this is, you know, I really looked up her description. This is from Joni Yonkins Herzog. She's a new one, again, she's from South Carolina. And I haven't quite figured out what it is. I even read her description, and I'm not sure what it is. So Jody has graciously said that he would do the interviews, and we'll film the interviews with the artists this year. So I'm going to leave it up to Jody to find out from Joni. I do know it's a flamingo, and I do know that that is a Barbie leg. Now, a very large Barbie leg that she said, and that is about, but, you know, these are one of those pieces that they're either going to love it or they're going to hate it, or the kids will love it or whatever, but it's meant to create conversation, and we love to see that.
Yes.
The other one is, here's Jack Howard Potter. He's the one who did Valkyrie that won the People's Choice this year, and he's got a new piece coming in, and that actually swings. And that will go on the ground right in front of where Valkyrie was. There was a pad built there for a piece, and so it's going to fit perfectly. And it will stop, you see where he puts the barb right there, so that it can't swing all the way through. But we've always asked for interactive pieces, and Jack has provided one this year, so it should be kind of fun. And then the third one is Particle, that will go right in the center where Mike Roig's piece that spins right now, well, when the wind is good, it will spin right there. And that is by Christian Happel. This is his second piece that he has. And it's influenced by his love of science, all right? So it's his molecular structure on a pedestal, is what he refers to it as. All right, now, the Roundabout. Now, this is Jonathan Bowling, and he's from North Carolina. We always include some North Carolina artists. We do not leave any of North Carolina out, even though we encourage getting some from other states. This is repurposed steel. Now, I don't know if you'll remember, some of you will remember, we had his piece several years ago. It was in Town Square, it was the horse. And that, I'm not sure if that ended up People's Choice or not, but it was very close in the voting, I know. But this is 14 feet high, and this was the one chosen to go in the Roundabout. So it will be seen. A big piece has to go there. Otherwise, you just lose it entirely. So that'll be kind of fun. Now, the library, always a fun one, because I promise you, and Mike can attest to it, that I don't try to influence anyone in here. But I will confess that I did try to influence, I always try to influence the library, because a couple years ago, several years ago, we had, and this is Adam Walls. Adam is from South Carolina, and he did Creepy Crawler. I don't know if you remember him, but it was so popular. People just took their kids and had their picture taken. And this reminded us of Bob the Builder. And this is going to go at the library. And this is going to be another photo op for a lot of parents and their children. So they're going to have a lot of fun with this one. This one is 600 pounds. I don't know what comes to it. It's not going to move in this thing. It's very heavy. And then Clayton Community Center, we have the Sun Twist. Now, this one is, we usually put a bright one there because it's off the road a bit. So in order to see it, we've picked a really bright one. This one is the ability of flowers to track the sun. And that's why it looks like it's spinning all the time. So these are the ones that your panel picked, and then the Art Advisory Board confirmed that night. And I'm excited, I hope you are, and at March 25th, you'll see them all put in. They're usually done, that we have an outstanding Public Works Department that has made this so smooth, coming in and going out. So appreciate it very much. Again, Mr. Sims, for thanking you for being on the panel. And thank you, Jody, again for doing the interviews. Appreciate it.
Thank
If there are
you.
any questions?
Questions or comments?
All right. Good, thank you.
I will make a comment. I think this is amazing. I love the work that you usually do, and especially it adds a lot of beauty to the town. So thank you for everything that you're doing.
Well, I think, the Public Art Advisory Board is dedicated to following through on the 5-year plan and being a part of that and offering something for when the people come into town. It's a cultural part of what they want to see. There's so many other things, but we specifically are trying to follow that guideline. And if any of you have been down at Scott Crawford's, you will see, in fact, Clark is up there spraying today. So the mural has started. So that's pretty exciting too. And I know a lot of people are excited about seeing that finished.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sarah, thank you so much, and thank you to our Public Art Advisory Board. Awesome work. All right, up next on our agenda is going to be the employee introductions and promotions, and this evening I'm going to start with James Blaylock. He's the Maintenance Superintendent, Water Resources.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor,
evening.
members of council, Rich, staff. I'm James Blaylock. I'm the Maintenance Superintendent for the Water Resources Division with the Town of Clayton, and I'm here to introduce my newest employee, Mr. Timothy Callahan. Some of you might recognize him. He used to work here. He went to the city of Raleigh. I reached out and see if he wanted to come back because, as you know, finding people that have experience and certifications is hard to do. He comes back to the town with a B distribution, grade 4 collections wastewater certification, and the now good as gold, high dollar Class A CDL with a tanker endorsement. That's changed since the federal government has put more stuff in it. So I'm glad to have him on the team. He's learned a lot in Raleigh. He supervision skills. I'm excited to have him on my crew.
And I just want to say I'm really excited to be back here to serve the people of Clayton once again.
Thank you. We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And next, we'll move to Ben Howell with the planning.
Good evening, council. I'm back yet again with yet another new member of the planning department. So with this hire, we're down to just one open vacancy now, so we're getting close. But I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Warner. She is our new development services coordinator. One of two now we have in the departments. She comes to us from the city of Raleigh, and prior to that has experience with Cisco doing program management. So she has some great experience. We're looking forward to having her on the team. She's already jumped in with both feet and has really been a huge help already. So.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited about the changes that Town of Clayton is making, and I'm very happy to be a part of it.
Thank you. Welcome. All right, and now we'll go on to engineering with Joshua Beard.
Good evening, Mayor, Town Council, Joshua Beard, Engineering Director. Tonight I have the privilege of introducing you to Kevin Watson. Kevin started this past Monday in the position of Environmental Compliance Officer. He's worked with the City of Raleigh for 14 years as an engineering specialist. He ensured private development complied with erosion control and stormwater ordinances for the City of Raleigh. Prior to that, he worked for the Town of Zebulon in code enforcement as well as a utilities technician. And he is certified as a stormwater inspector and maintenance professional, as well as certifications in certified professional in erosion sediment control, as well as certified erosion, sediment, and stormwater inspector. So in this position, Kevin's really going to be the boots on the ground, ensuring that development and other residents are complying with our erosion and sediment control ordinances, as well as other support for our Phase 2 permit. So the post-construction, construction stormwater, pollution prevention, good housekeeping, illicit discharge and detection, good housekeeping, education involvement, those 6 minimum measures of our Phase 2 permit. In just 1 week, he's already had an opportunity, shall I say, to, redirect a contractor, a concrete contractor looking to wash out in a storm drain. In just 1 week, he's had an opportunity to resolve and get that situation mitigated. So we're excited to have him on board, looking forward to all he's going to bring and really take our program to the next step. So with that, Kevin.
Thank y'all for having me. I'm excited to be here, hit the ground running, and look forward to many, many years of service to the citizens of Clayton. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. All right. And Rich Capola.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Rich Capola, Interim Town Manager. I have the pleasure of introducing Josh Grubb, our new data analyst. As you remember, that position was approved with this year's budget. It's new to the town, but really going to be focused on utilizing the data that we have in the various databases throughout the town to really help us make better informed decisions. Some of those dashboards, those KPI, key performance indicators. Josh is really going to be the guy behind that. Most recently, he was with the private sector, but prior to that, he worked for the city of Raleigh since 2016. He grew up in Ashe County, received his bachelor's degree from East Tennessee State. He's been working on data throughout his career, and right now he currently lives in the town of Clayton since 2018, and he's married with 2 kids. So we're really excited for him to get on board. He's jumped right in, started kind of helping us scrub the data that he's going to then utilize for some of those projects that we have set up for him. So we're really excited for him to be on board. So, Josh.
Thanks. Good to meet you all. I'm glad to be here. Excited to it.
Awesome. We're glad you're here. Welcome. All right. And Deputy Fire Chief Matt Sutphin. Doesn't say anything about Chief Lee Barbie on my agenda. But you're more than welcome to.
Good evening, Lee Barbie, Fire Chief. I'd like to introduce the guys that we have promoted up. All of you come up as I call your name. Corey Beard, promoted to captain. He's assigned to Rescue 1 B shift. Brian Belvin, promoted to captain. He's assigned to Rescue 1 C shift. Anthony Bonero, promoted to captain, assigned to Engine 1 A shift. Jake Cox, promoted to engineer, assigned to Engine 1 B shift. Lou DiArco, promoted to engineer, assigned to Rescue 1 C shift. Lou's not with us tonight, he had a family commitment. Brandon Messino, promoted to engineer, assigned to Engine 1 A shift. And Ryan Tillerson, promoted to engineer, assigned to A shift Rescue 1. I'd like to congratulate all these guys for the hard work they've done over the years to make this accomplishment. Thank you, fellas.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, every one of you get to say a little something. Absolutely. That's great professional development. Yes, sir.
So we obviously had a lot of positions to fill, and I think it speaks a lot to us that we were able to fill all of them internally with qualified people. So we're constantly, obviously, working on self-improvement within the department and ourselves, which is good for us, but it's also good for wherever we're going to respond to calls. So also thank y'all for your support so we could add these positions.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'd like to say thank you. I was, born and raised here in Clayton, so it means a lot to me that I get to continue with my career here. As Clayton grows, I get to grow with the community also. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Well, thank you. And you know what? We didn't recognize you without a baseball hat on.
I feel lost without it. So.
I understand. Thank you, Brian.
Good evening. I just want to say thank you. It's an honor to serve the town of Clayton.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Good evening. Just want to say thank you guys, and that I'm looking forward to serving the town of Clayton even more in my new position. Thank you guys.
Congratulations.
Good evening. I'm excited for the growth that's coming for us soon, especially with what Chief Barbie and Chief Sutphin have been telling us. I'm excited for this.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to increase my knowledge. Look forward to the new roles and responsibilities with the job.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Job well done. And now I would like to make a special presentation on behalf of the town of Clayton and this town council. As all of you already know, the job of the town clerk is one that your town cannot be successful without. And in my 19 years as mayor of the town of Clayton, I have had great town clerks. They do so much more than what the law requires. But Kimberly Moffett has always gone above and beyond for this council and those she has served prior to. And we are excited for her on so many levels because she has decided to retire effective March the 16th. And we just can't say thank you enough for what you have done for the town of Clayton. And we cannot tell you how excited we are for you. I told her, I live vicariously through people. So when you take trips to Vegas, I go with you to Vegas. When you go and see family up north and have dinner, I go up north with your family and have dinner. And she has a son who just got engaged. So she has a lot going on. And we know that you're going to just soar in retirement. But we just can't thank you enough for what you have done for the town of Clayton. You have been a true lifesaver. And on behalf of this town council and this town of Clayton, I'd like to present you with this little memento that says, with our greatest appreciation, we hereby honor Kimberly Moffett for your years of committed service and dedication as town clerk for the town of Clayton. Your hard work will never be forgotten. Retirement is when you stop living at work and begin working at living. 2014 to 2022. Thank you, Kimberly Moffett.
Just a quick thank you so much for everything. And like I just said to the mayor, pack your bags because we're leaving for Vegas on the 20th. Honestly, thank you so much for everything. It has been my honor. I've worked with some amazing, amazing people. Dave's sitting out there. He's one of them. So many amazing people, and I appreciate it. I appreciate every single one up here. These people work so hard. Michael Granis is out there. You have no idea how hard these people work and care about this town. And it's been my honor. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and with that, we're going to move on to our first public hearing. It's 2022-09 ANX Ashcroft Section 2 Annexation.
Staff would request that this annexation public hearing be continued to April 4th.
All right. Thank you, sir. And then up next will be 2021-74 SUP Amelia Church Tribute Community Special Use Permit, quasi-judicial. And I will turn it over to the attorney for a briefing for everyone on the quasi-judicial process.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a reminder that this is a quasi-judicial proceeding wherein rules of due process and rules of evidence apply. Witnesses will be sworn. One of those rules of evidence that applies has to do with the type of testimony that's required on certain subjects, such as matters that require expert witnesses like appraisals, property values, traffic, engineering issues would require expert testimony rather than lay witnesses. In these types of cases, council members sit as judges, find the facts, and apply them to the rules under the ordinance, and the decision has to be based on the evidence presented here at the hearing.
All right, thank you, sir. So if anyone is going to speak At any time during this process, you will need to be sworn in by the town clerk.
Anybody that wishes to offer testimony, if you could please stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge and belief? Thank you. When you come up, you'll see a sign-in sheet. If you could just make sure that you sign that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, council. So tonight, this public hearing is for a special use permit for Amelia Church, a tribute community. It is a request to construct 220 apartments in an O&I zoning district located on the east side of Amelia Church Road, south of its intersection with NC 42. The property size is just under 20 acres and is currently vacant. So you'll see here the current zoning, that dark blue color is O&I, and you can also see the current street view of a vacant field. So again, the proposed use is apartments. The proposed density is 11 units an acre. The zoning district allows up to 12 units an acre for apartments, so they are within that maximum density. Building height of 2 stories with 53% impervious surface. They are required to provide 2 spaces per unit plus 1 visitor space per 4 parking spaces. And they have provided that plus 25 additional overflow spaces for a total of 520 spaces, parking spaces. They were required to provide 1 bicycle rack per building. They have provided 58, so 3 additional bicycle racks located around the amenity center. The site will be accessed from Amelia Church Road and Short Johnson Road, and they are providing 12.5% open space, and approximately 0.8 acres of the site is resource conservation area. So you'll see here on the slide the proposed site plan. Again, it's 55 buildings, 220 total apartments. You'll see in the center of the site, there is an amenity center. They're proposing an amenity center with the pool, a grilling deck, 2 pickleball courts. Also in the top left corner, they're proposing to have a car wash station as well. The 2040 Comprehensive Growth Plan identifies this area for medium-density residential uses, as does the 2045 plan, but this, again, was submitted under the 2040 Growth Plan. You see on the screen the medium-density residential definition. Again, gross residential density generally up to 5 dwelling units an acre. When densities up to 70 units an acre may be allowed through a planned development, which we no longer have. The surrounding land uses to the north, they have a mixed-use development with some multifamily apartments existing, and then single-family residential around the other areas, and it is consistent with existing zoning and the Unified Development Code. As for findings of fact, you'll see in the staff report, I've provided the applicant's responses to these findings in the presentation. I'm just focusing on the staff commentary. So the first finding of fact is that the application will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plans as submitted and approved. Staff commentary is that the proposed development will have full movement access on Amelia Church Road and Short Johnson Road and is located adjacent to an existing mixed-use development that includes apartments. The proposed development is near a major intersection, and with the proposed conditions will meet the requirements in the town's Unified Development Code. The second finding is that the application meets all required specifications and conforms to the standards and practices of sound land use planning and the Town Code of Ordinances and other applicable regulations. The staff commentary on that one is that the proposed development complies with the Unified Development Code. The design of the proposed apartment development meets landscaping requirements, including all buffer and street tree requirements. The proposed access points will meet engineering standards as well as fire standards. And with the approval of the wastewater allocation request and proposed conditions, adequate public utilities will be available to serve the site. The third finding of fact is that the application will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property and will not be detrimental to the use or development of adjacent properties or on their neighborhood uses. As staff is not qualified to make a call on the property value, we have remained silent on that. But staff commentary does state that the proposed development complies with the existing zoning district. While it does not comply with the 2040 growth plan, it is located adjacent to an existing mixed-use development with apartments at a density of approximately 14 units per acre. On the other sides of the development, it is surrounded by low-density, single-family homes and agricultural uses. The final finding of fact is that the application will not adversely affect the adopted plans and policies of the town or violate the character of existing standards for development of adjacent properties. The staff commentary on this finding is that the proposed development complies with the existing office and institutional zoning district, which allows for a maximum density of 12 units per acre for apartments. The proposed development does not comply with the 2040 growth plan or the 2045 growth plan, as both growth plans identify this area as medium-density residential, defined as 3 to 5 units per acre. However, the proposed development is located adjacent to an area identified in both the 2040 and 2045 growth plans as a neighborhood center, which would allow for more dense residential development as well as mixed-use development. With the proposed conditions, the proposed development will complement the adjacent mixed-use and apartment development and would provide some transition in density from the existing apartments to the surrounding residential and agricultural uses. And at this point, I will hand it over to Joshua Baird, who will speak to the wastewater allocation.
Joshua Baird, Engineering Director. Excuse me. This will be a separate action other than the SUP, but I think it's informative to go ahead and provide the information as part of the staff update here so that you have the information as you're considering the project, but it will be a separate action item at the end. So the total project has gone through the wastewater policy that's been adopted by Town Council.
I am so sorry. So just making sure for the potential action, do we need to go ahead and do something about that before we move on to the adopted resolution?
No.
If it's okay, can I go ahead and make a motion on it? Well,
I would.
I don't think it's
Councilman,
warranted.
I would suggest this is part of the evidence on the permit application. So I'd suggest let him finish, let the others finish, and then come back to the permit issue, and then act on the wastewater issue if the permit is approved. If the permit's not approved, you won't need to act on the wastewater issue.
Does that work?
Yes.
All right, so the allocation, or this allocation has been scored based on the policy. The project does score and meet the minimum 50 points. It receives right that at a minimum. That is including pump station improvements that would be required to serve this project. The total request that has been submitted is for 53,760 gallons per day. This here project, at a high level, the plan to serve this site would be a private pump station that would be installed and constructed, and any off-site easements obtained. The town would accept this flow via gravity, and a gravity flow versus a pressure flow, and it will drain, based on the preliminary plan now, it would drain down to the JMH pump station. We are anticipating that there would be some pump station improvements at the pump station as well as in the force main. So there's some significant improvements that would be associated with this, and it will get to them, and there's a condition regarding those as well. The JMH pump station and force main does drain to Little Creek Waste Reclamation Facility. In terms of looking at the overall timing and the sequence of events in terms of managing our wastewater over the next few years, I'm not in a position to recommend the allocation to you without a schedule tied to that, as we've discussed at the retreat, that most of the allocations will come before you on a schedule. One of the big key drivers here is the Little Creek pump station and linear infrastructure. Council has awarded both of those contracts, and a lot of this flow will be dependent upon those projects such that we can get that flow across across the ridge off of Little Creek Waste Reclamation Facility and onto the Clayton to Raleigh pump station and utilize the additional capacity that we have in Raleigh. If you recall, several months ago, we obtained additional 750,000 gallons per day, so a total of 1.75 million gallons per day that we have with Raleigh. So timing of those projects needs to be consistent with us being able to accept this flow as we progress over the next few years until our new plant is completed. Looking at scheduling, that infrastructure is due to be online towards the end of 2024 when we think we'd be in a position to accept the flow. And therefore, I am recommending that we do not, as the town does not sign the sewer permit and flow tracking permit forms until July of 2023 associated with this project. So with that, I will turn it back over to Ben and can take questions at the end if that works out on any of the presentation.
Thank you.
Mayor, could I ask a question at this point?
Please.
Has that schedule been agreed upon by the applicant?
The applicant is aware of the date. The applicant would like to move forward quicker, but seeing as what we can do and be able to accept this, that is the date I provided late last week, and so certainly can allow them the chance to speak to that if there's anything else, but they are aware of that date, yes.
They're aware of it, but you don't have agreement on it at this point?
They are aware of it. I don't know if I'd say agreement, but yes, they're aware of what we can do.
Okay, thank you.
So for clarification, I'm hearing there is no agreement. True or false? There is an awareness, but there is not a set agreement on this date.
I think that there's an understanding that for the project to move forward, that's what it will need to be. I can't speak, and if the developer is in, I'd like to give them the opportunity, but they are, again, aware of it, and would, for the project to move forward and accept this flow, that's what it would need to be.
Okay. We're going to allow them to address that when they get the podium. Thank you.
All right. Just wrapping up the staff presentation. Again, as it is in your staff report, I also provided the town council considerations on this slide. Just as a reminder, again, this is a special use permit with findings of fact, and there is a burden of proof that the applicant must meet. If council does decide to approve the special use permit, staff recommends following conditions of approval be placed on that approval, on the special use permit. One are, the first, really the first two conditions are really our standard ones, that the conditions be placed on the site plan before it's approved, and that the development be constructed in substantial conformance with the special use permit. Condition 3 is the maximum number of dwelling units shall not exceed 220. Condition 4, requiring the minimum 25 overflow parking spaces. Condition 5 speaks to the amenities they will be providing: the clubhouse, outdoor pool with year-round patio area with grilling stations, 2 pickleball courts, walking trails, car wash station, and a minimum of 5 benches, 5 waste receptacles, and 5 pet waste receptacles throughout the site. These are conditions that the applicant proposed and are also based on their wastewater allocation scoring. Condition 6 is requiring the transportation improvement as required by NCDOT, which is construction of an exclusive southbound left turn lane on Amelia Church Road with 50 feet of full width storage and appropriate deceleration and taper. Condition 7, relating to the wastewater, that the developer will provide a downstream sewer capacity study, including existing allocated paper flows, to determine if the existing pump station is adequate. If not, the developer will be responsible to provide improvements to existing facilities and any required utility easements at their cost. Condition 8, also related to utilities, is that the proposed wastewater collection system consists of a private pump station and force main providing connection to the existing public gravity infrastructure along NC 42. The private pump station and force main will not be maintained by the town of Clayton and will remain the responsibility of the developer for perpetuity. The town will not allow connection to the public infrastructure directly by private force main and shall be transitioned to a gravity system prior to connection to the town's public infrastructure. The developer will also be responsible for installation of an AMI sewer meter to account for all flows entering public infrastructure. Condition 9 is that all the buildings in the development will be constructed in accordance with the architectural elevations provided in the approved site plan, including identified facade materials. All buildings will include a minimum brick masonry coverage of 25% on all building facades. Condition 10 said all buildings and units within the development will include the following sustainable high-efficiency products and appliances with certification of the use of these features required prior to certificate of occupancy for each building: high-efficiency windows, high-efficiency appliances and HVAC units, and high-efficiency roofing materials. Condition 11 is that cross-access easements will be provided to the existing apartment complex to the north and to the property with PIN 1658-01-15-0291 as shown on the site plan. The applicant will construct the cross-access to the property lines, or the applicant can submit a payment in lieu at a rate of 125% of the cost of the cross-access as estimated by a professional engineer prior to approval of the construction drawings. And condition 12 is that all resource conservation areas shall be maintained and protected in perpetuity by a homeowners association. And with that, that is the end of the staff presentation.
All right, any questions or comments for staff? Mr. Sims?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Ben, I just got a couple questions. Just want to make sure I get some clarity on something here. So the maximum density, and this is on finding of fact number 4 in staff commentaries. So we said that there is a maximum density of 12 units per acre for the apartments, but in our 2040 and 2045 growth plan, it's defined as 3 to 5 units, correct? So this falls up under, you said, the neighborhood center. Is there a density number for the neighborhood center?
I don't have that information directly with me, but I do believe the neighborhood center, I cannot recall directly if it includes a maximum density, but it does allow for denser development. But again, this falls just outside of that area.
A denser development, but is that, just that number is what I'm kind of.
I'll have to look that up.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, anyone else?
Would you say it falls outside of the neighborhood center?
Yes.
So on the application, they're calling them apartments, but, you know, it looks like they're kind of townhomes to me. So what's the justification or the difference between apartments? Just educate me on that, because like I said, it looks like they're more like townhomes. For this particular proposal, since they are proposing a single lot, a single master lot, and multiple units in each building with an internal parking lot, through discussion between the applicant and staff, we did determine that they fell more under the apartment definition versus the townhome definition.
All right, I do have a question. So in the beginning, you kind of said the property value, we went kind of silent on that. Can you kind of clarify that a little bit for me?
Can you say that one more time? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. In the beginning, you kind of said property value was we kind of went silent on that. Can you provide clarity on that for me?
Right. Well, since staff is not considered an expert in property values, that's why we are remaining silent. The applicant, I believe, is prepared to provide some expert testimony to that finding of fact.
All right, anyone else? All right, thank you, Ben. Now I'll give the floor to the applicant.
Ben.
Hey, Ben, is the site plan on here? Yeah. Can we just have that displayed? I think that would be easier. And good evening, Mayor McLeod, Mayor Pro Tem Thompson, and members of the Town Council. My name is Neil Ghosh. I am an attorney with the Morningstar Law Group at 112 West Main Street in Durham. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Tribute Companies to present evidence in support of its application for special use approval for a residential community with a total of 220 homes. The property, as Mr. Howell mentioned, is a little under 20 acres in size and is zone OI. Currently, the property basically is vacant farmland. You may have noticed that the staff report refers to the project as multifamily. Technically, that is correct under the Unified Development Code. As been mentioned, that is because these units will be on one master lot as opposed to townhomes where they are on, each townhome is on its own individual lot. But it's important to note that this product type will appear and operate more like townhomes than a traditional apartment community. What we're proposing are 55 buildings, each with 4 two-story homes or townhomes, and they're set up in kind of a quad or a square rather than in a line like a standard townhome, but they will function basically as townhomes. Now, I apologize if I'm being overly formal in this quasi-judicial setting, but I am an attorney after all. As you know, we must introduce evidence on each of the points you all must make a finding on in order for you all to approve the special use permit tonight. We have witnesses and exhibits for that purpose, and at this time, I would request that all materials referred to or used by the witnesses, including the staff report and all its exhibits and all the application materials, be entered into the record as evidence, and that judicial notice be taken to the contents of the Unified Development Code, Comprehensive Plan, and other adopted plans of the town of Clayton. In addition to those exhibits, we will offer expert testimony on certain aspects of the project. At this time, I would like to enter into evidence the resumes of our expert witnesses. I have them here. What is the appropriate protocol for that? I want to give that hand that to the clerk.
Yes.
Well, let me first mention what I'm handing up, and then I'll hand that up to you. So I have the resumes of Ms. Catherine McPherson, who is the project manager from Bowler Engineering. Also, Mr. Nate Boquin with Ramey Kemp, which is the project's traffic engineer. And then I also have the resume of Mr. Richard Kirkland, who is a real estate appraiser from Kirkland Appraisals. In addition to his resume, I also will be handing up an appraisal report that he prepared for this project specifically. Let me bring that up to you. Okay, so this is that first resume, the project manager. This is the resume of our traffic engineer. This is the resume of our real estate appraiser. And these are copies of his report. There's 10 each. Mr. Attorney, I think it would be appropriate to give the board just some time to look at those exhibits and before I move on, or should I just continue?
That's not necessary.
Okay. So I would like to tender each of these folks as experts in their representative fields, qualified to give opinion testimony pursuant to the requirement of North Carolina General Statute 160D 1402J. We also have Mr. Mark Maynard from the Tribute Companies, the applicant for the project. Before I call our first witness, I wanted to speak to and get some clarification on the wastewater allocation action. Our understanding is that the town is in a position to vote upon the allocation tonight, but that the vote will be subject to a timeline such that this project would not be able to get a permit issued until July of next year. Is that correct?
That's correct. The town would not sign a permit until July.
But the allocation could be voted upon tonight.
The allocation can be voted upon with condition.
Understood. Okay. And Mr. Attorney wants to get some clarification. Is the vote tonight on the allocation, is that a quasi-judicial matter or legislative? Okay. And what kind of approval would need to happen in July for the permit? Is that legislative or administrative?
If the approval tonight were on a schedule, then there wouldn't be any additional board action required in July.
Got it. Excellent. Okay, thank you. So with that, I will call our first witness, who is Ms. Catherine McPherson.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm Catherine McPherson. I'm with Bowler Engineering. I'm the project manager, and I've worked for just a little bit over a year there with Bowler. Prior to Bowler, I've been in the development industry with various civil firms and landscape architecture firms for over 10 years. And I've worked on many different residential communities throughout the area. I earned a degree in landscape architecture in 1988 from North Carolina State University, and I'm a registered landscape architect for the state of North Carolina. We were engaged by the applicant, Mark Maynard, to help with the design of the new proposed residential community. And I've been involved with the development plan since the start of the project. So in project overview, in consistency with the adoptive plans, this project aligns with the town's adopted plans and development ordinance. The 2045 growth plan, this property is designated for medium density residential, but is adjacent to an area designated as neighborhood center. Guidance is provided within the plan which suggests that this designation will ideally be developed with higher density residential, including small lot, single family, townhomes, and apartments. This describes this project perfectly. Moreover, the site is adjacent to an existing multifamily community and is near the intersection of Amelia Church and 42, where few non-residential uses have been established. So the project will both be harmonious with the existing land use pattern and will facilitate walking opportunities to the external pedestrian destinations consistent with the growth plan. As with all new developments, our site plan conforms to the town's UDO. We've been working with the town staff since July of last year to create a site plan that meets all the code ordinances. We've gone through 3 rounds of reviews, and we're pretty much clear of comments at this point. Under the UDO, the development of apartments is subject to a few supplemental standards. This site plan demonstrates compliance with these standards. For example, no parking spaces are located within any of the required yards, and in fact, we've taken care to place all of our parking to the interior of the site with the buildings pushed outwards towards the periphery, so you won't see a sea of parking when you're driving by. The site plan also shows that the required divided ingress and egress have been provided at both entrances, not just the main entrance on Amelia Church. We also have a strong sidewalk connection throughout the whole entire site with additional pedestrian trails throughout to encourage walking. Finally, we've also agreed to a number of conditions that you saw earlier to ensure the high quality of the development to the town standards. These conditions include overflow parking, a host of amenities, including a pool, a clubhouse, pickleball courts, and on the architectural side, we've agreed to 25% masonry coverage on the building facades, high-efficiency windows, appliances, HVAC equipment, and roofing materials. In conclusion, based on the foregoing, and it's my professional opinion that the proposed project meets all the required specifications and conforms to the standards and practices of sound land use planning and the town code of ordinances and other applicable regulations. Given that the UDO was adopted to promote health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the populace, and the project is in conformance with the UDO, it is also my professional opinion that the project will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plans. Finally, the project will not adversely affect the adopted plans and policies of the town or violate the character of existing standards for development of the adjacent properties. Thank you for your time, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? All right, thank you. Mr. Sims, yes.
Mr. Mayor. So, same question that I asked the planner for neighborhood center. Do you know what the number is?
Say again.
The same question to ask as far as, you know what the number is for density for neighborhood center?
Do I know the neighborhood center density? I don't off the top.
You mentioned that, yes.
No.
Right, you're asking what the density, what the guidance in the comprehensive plan is for densities within the neighborhood center?
Right, in the comprehensive plan, because what you said as far as it falls in with the neighborhood center.
It falls just outside the neighborhood center.
Right, and I would defer to staff on what, what the comp plan says with respect to residential densities in the neighborhood center. My understanding is that the comp plan does refer to multifamily housing in the neighborhood center.
Yes, Ben.
I did look it up and get clarification. In the 2040 growth plan, the growth plan does not actually mention a density limit or a density at all for the neighborhood center. It says that higher density should be located in close proximity to shopping and service destinations. And the 2040 growth plan also has a table that does state O&I is consistent with the neighborhood center designation. The 2045 growth plan, again, this falls under 2040 plan, but the 2045 growth plan does identify a maximum density of about 10 units an acre for neighborhood centers, with higher densities allowed within walking distance to downtown and/or access to transit. But again, this application, because when it was submitted, does fall under the 2040 growth plan.
Thank you.
So just for additional clarification, this is still not in the neighborhood center?
Correct. It falls just outside of the neighborhood center in both plans.
And for another clarification, Kathy, you did sign the, okay, thank you, ma'am.
Excellent. So our next witness will be Mr. Nate Boquin with Ramey Kemp.
Good evening. My name is Nate Boquin. I'm a traffic engineer and project manager with Ramey Kemp Associates, where I've worked for more than 6 years. I have extensive experience preparing traffic impact studies, signal warrant analyses, trip generation forecasts, and traffic simulations. I obtained a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering from North Carolina State University, and I'm a licensed engineer in the state of North Carolina. I'm also certified as a professional traffic operations engineer. We were engaged by the applicant to conduct a traffic impact analysis for this project. I oversaw and reviewed the study, which Mr. Ghosh previously entered into the record. That is what I'm here to speak with you tonight about. Our study analyzed 3 existing intersections near the site to evaluate the impact this project might have from a traffic standpoint. We also analyzed traffic at the project's 2 proposed site driveways. The intersections studied are Amelia Church Road at NC 42, Short Johnson Road at NC 42, and Corbett Road at Amelia Church Road. For the study, we used counts from September of 2016 and from June of 2021. As was required at the time of the study, we also applied a COVID adjustment factor to the June 2021 counts because of the reductions in traffic on the road network due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Our study assumed a project of 224 units, which is 4 more units than what is proposed tonight. We also applied a 2% annual growth rate for background traffic to project traffic volumes to future year conditions. With those parameters, we found that this project is expected to generate over 100 peak hour trips in both the AM and PM peak hours. Based on that information, we compared existing traffic conditions to 2 different scenarios to understand the impacts to the traffic might have on the level service to the road network. We looked at a no-build scenario where this project is not built, and we looked at a build scenario where the project is built, including the roadway recommended road improvements. For each scenario, we forecasted out to 2023, which was the expected completion date for this project when we ran the study. In general, the study found that the existing levels of service today meets the town and NCDOT requirements. The lowest level of service existing today is during the weekday PM peak hour at Amelia Church Road and NC 42, especially on the westbound approach. Even still, the level of service today is a level C. Our study also found that without the project, the levels of service would not change significantly, though there would be a slight decrease at Amelia Church Road and NC 42. Now, with the recommended road improvements, our study found that levels of service still decreases at Amelia Church Road and NC 42 with about 3 seconds of additional delay. We saw a slight improvement at Short Johnson Road and NC 42, and no change at Corbett Road and Amelia Church Road. As far as road improvements, the study recommends improvements along Amelia Church Road and Short Johnson Road, primarily to provide safe movements at the proposed entrance points, including an exclusive southbound left turn lane on Amelia Church Road. Based on the study, my professional opinion is that the project will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plans as submitted with the recommended road improvements. Thank you for your time and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Any questions for traffic engineer? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. And while he's signing in, I'll call our last witness, Mr. Rich Kirkland, real estate appraiser with Kirkland Appraisals.
Good evening. Again, my name's Rich Kirkland, Kirkland Appraisals. I'm a state certified general appraiser. I've been appraising in the area for about 26 years. I'm also an MAI through the Appraisal Institute. And I was asked to look at this, do an impact analysis to see if the proposed SUP would have any impact on adjoining property values. I think it's helpful for me sometimes to explain that when I'm looking at that, I'm looking at what is currently allowed to be put at that site, if it remains the O&I zoning, and compare that to this shift in use. Presently, the property as zoned O&I most likely would be developed with some form of medical office similar to what's nearby at the hospital. We'd be looking at a fairly large clearing of the site with a lot of paving and some tall buildings. The proposed shift in use actually makes a lot more sense given the location there at that intersection. The typical pattern you'd see would be the retail use, like where the Sheetz is at, then office, then apartments. We've already got retail, then apartments. If you shift to office, you're kind of getting an inferior pattern of development because you're resetting the sort of commercial uses towards buffering the nearby residential uses. So the shift to this site, going to residential multifamily, townhome style, is actually a much better use of this property to protect nearby property values than if it was developed with medical office buildings. So it's my professional opinion that this project, as proposed, would not endanger or negatively impact the adjoining property values, and that it's a more harmonious use of the site than the current zoning allows for. In the impact analysis that was put forward, we've shown a number of compatibilities between townhomes and also apartments, since some of the documentation seemed to reference it different ways at different places. So we went ahead and addressed both townhomes and apartments, showing compatibility with nearby housing. So again, it's our professional opinion that this proposed use will have no negative consequences on adjoining property value. I'd be happy to answer any questions or go into greater detail.
Questions or comments for the appraisal?
Yeah, I just have one question. When it comes to the buffers, what are the length of the buffers?
Pardon? The length of the buffers or the width?
Yeah, the width, well, the length of the,
you have the site plan engineer can speak to that. I see they're on there, but I don't know exactly how wide those are at the moment.
All right, yes, sir.
He was asking about the width. Yeah.
I believe that we have two types of buffers, a 15-foot and a 10-foot, depending on where they fall on the site.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rich, did you make sure it's not?
You good?
I'm assuming there are no other questions from Mr. Kirkland, so.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
No,
Casey.
I have questions, but not Mr. Cookwood.
Oh, you do have some questions? Okay.
Yeah, but not the Mr. Cookwood, just in general.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Okay, all right. So I guess these are classified as apartments. Most of the apartments I'm familiar with typically have some sort of on-site staff. Is this going to have an on-site staff?
Yeah, this will have on-site staff, and if you have questions, or is this the general line of questioning about?
Yeah, I have several general questions.
Is it about operations?
There is going to be somebody on site.
Yeah, you want to come
at
up,
all
Mark?
times? Or?
Sure, yeah, so there will be staff.
Okay.
And you can ask your other questions, but this is Mark Maynard of the Tribute Companies, representative for the applicant tonight.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. There'll be leasing staff on site that will be located in the clubhouse.
Okay. And then I have a couple more. So I see that there's a trash compactor up at the top left corner, I guess, of the site plan. Is each individual townhome or I guess apartment, are they going to have their own separate trash cans too? Or is this, how does that typically work in a community like this?
It'll just be a dumpster. They'll bring the trash to the dumpster.
Okay. And then lastly, I see between building number 29 and 27, I guess that was one of the conditions of the proposal, but that would be a stub out area for future development?
Right in this area here.
The landscape architect can speak to some of these technical questions better than me, but I believe that's required per ordinance for connectivity.
I mean, it just looks like one on the plan. I was just asking if that's what it is.
Yeah, I can't quite see the building numbers. Oh, here.
This section right here.
Right there. Yeah, that is a stub out to the properties to the north. So for future development, if those sites ever developed.
That time.
For interconnectivity.
All right, thank you. That's all. That's all right.
Okay, anyone else? All right, anything else you'd like to say?
Just a quick closing, and for the record, again, this is Neil Ghosh, attorney for the applicant. The witnesses you just heard from have laid the factual foundation for each of the findings of fact that you all must make under the UDO to approve the special use. Ms. McPherson spoke to the project adherence to the UDC and the town's plan. She explained that we have worked with staff to put forth the site plan before you today in compliance with the town standards. Mr. Boquin walked you through the findings of the traffic study, and the project includes the recommended road improvements from that study. Finally, Mr. Kirkland gave his expert opinion that the proposed project will not have a substantial adverse impact on property values in the surrounding area. I think they were pretty thorough with their testimony, and we are available to answer any questions you may have, if to the extent you have any. Based on the evidence we provided tonight, though, I would submit that the applicant has met its burden. Therefore, we are respectfully asking you for your approval for the special use permit tonight, and also for the wastewater allocation. We thank you for your time tonight and patience, and we're available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure the council got the answer to the question about the
agreement,
current unavailability of sewer. Obviously, you got a public health and safety issue if you can't develop with sewer. So is the schedule that has been proposed agreeable to the developer?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that back up. I meant to address that. Yes, with the questions that were answered earlier before I called the first witness, that's what our understanding is. We're in agreement with that, and we are comfortable with that type of a schedule. Yeah.
Thank you for clarification. All right, we've heard from the applicant. Is there anyone who wished to speak against this? And were you both sworn in?
I'm not speaking, I'm just handing this forward.
Okay.
Hi, Mayor. Hi, Council. If it's okay with you, I have a little bit of imagery that I would like to pass out in a packet just to drive some points home today.
We take a look at the photos that are shown. Thank you.
Hello, my name is McKenna Parrish. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I would like to address some concerns I have regarding the granting of the special permit for project 2021-74-SUP Amelia Church. I live at 377 Short Johnson Road and own 80 adjacent acres next to the proposed development site for agricultural use. My concerns lie with runoff that is inevitable from the potential development site. My farm and this potential project lies within a watershed, and my farm is at the lowest elevation within this watershed. This means that all surrounding stormwater within this watershed drains directly in front of my home. Amelia Station is an aforementioned complex for multi-use that was mentioned earlier, and it's a complex that was developed in 2013 within the same watershed at the front of Short Johnson Road. The creation of a development like Amelia Station has led to erosion within a few years by itself on my property, despite the implementation of a stormwater retention pond within the complex. It's done little to mitigate the damage of stormwater runoff from so much impervious surface within the watershed. I fear that the proposed project discussed today will exacerbate this damage. Because of my concerns, I did reach out to Johnson County's Department of Soil and Erosion to take a look at the creek in front of my home, who were kind enough to send me a map detailing how stormwater flows within this watershed. On the map that I passed out on page 3, highlights the boundary of this watershed area in blue. This area encompasses my farm on the right, with Amelia Station being seen in the upper left. Please note that this area already encompasses Amelia Station and would also encompass the proposed site being discussed today. The proposed development is highlighted near the center of this outline. On slide 4 is an email that I received from Soil and Erosion, and it states, the watershed is everything inside the outlined area draining to one outlet. Everything inside the blue boundary line drains to the outlet in your pasture. The other map is the arrows showing where the water is flowing. Take note of the arrows at the bottom of the page. I apologize as they're hard to see. On page 5, you will see the map which showcases the topography of the area or the change in elevation. Please note my pasture and home are at the lowest elevation of this map. You'll see arrows that have been drawn by the helpful folks at Soil and Erosion. There are 2 sets of arrows, and I apologize as they are dark and a little hard to see. One set follows the shape of Short Johnson near the middle, while the other flows from the bottom. This just traces how water flows downhill from these sites. These arrows show how it flows onto my property. Please note that the proposed development site is also highlighted here in white and will directly affect how much stormwater will drain onto the property. On page 6 is a response I received this morning from an environmental engineer with the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality when inquiring about hydrologic flow on my property. Hydrologic flow is defined as characteristic behavior and the total quantity of water involved in a drainage basin. The email states, from taking a basic look at the site and based on the information provided, it looks like the development between Short Johnson Road and C42 and Amelia Church Road may have led to the increase of flow through the stream on your property since it was built about 10 years ago and drains into your stream. In my pasture, there used to be a rather shallow indentation of a stream that could have been easily driven across. Cows could pass easily between pastures across it. A water line feeding water to a barn at the end of my road had been buried for decades beneath it without issue. Prior to the development of Amelia Station in 2013, a complex similar to this proposed project and adjacent, this feature was hardly visible on satellite imagery. Since the construction of Amelia Station, it's transformed the indentation of a stream into a gully due to runoff despite a stormwater retention pond implemented in the complex. On page 8, you will find a satellite image of my family farm on the right-hand side of the photo. Highlighted in yellow, there's a shallow recess. It's not visible, which is why I felt the need to circle it for you. Off to the left is my home and surrounding farm. This image was taken prior to the development at the beginning of Short Johnson Road within this watershed. On page 9, you will see an alarming difference between the shallow recess that was once there. Please note that this was taken after the development of Amelia Station, which is next to the proposed site of Project 2021-74-SUP Amelia Church you will all be voting on today. What was formerly a shallow creek, no more than 6 inches deep, has been washed into a gully up to 5 feet deep and in some places 15 feet across. This has caused several issues beyond just a degradation of the property. The amount of impervious surface from Amelia Station has already caused a dramatic change in the property. On page 11 is a picture showcasing the damage from increased runoff since 2013. This particular section of the trench is 15 feet across. This used to be a shallow creek as shown in prior satellite images before development. This has been the change just within the last 9 years from the impervious surface already at the height of the watershed area. Page 12 showcases pipes that have been buried for decades prior to development of Amelia Station in 2013. This pipe feeds water from our well to our barn near the end of the road. Due to erosion, the pipes have become exposed and vulnerable to damage. Multiple repairs have been made in an attempt to keep water at the barn, and when damaged, these pipes also cut water from my personal home and residents at my home at 361 Short Johnson. This is the most recent attempt to protect them, as you can see in the photo, which has been nullified due to storms and stormwater. I wish to show you these just to highlight how much has been washed away in recent years, considering these pipes were buried safely beneath the surface. On page 13, are more pictures to highlight the depth and breadth of the gully. The arrow here just simply points to a bowl swallowed by a portion of the gully. I would like to emphasize that this is not the deepest portion and can easily hide a bowl. Beyond the obvious damage, I've also dealt with septic drainage issues due to an oversaturated septic drainage field, particularly after any rain. I appreciate you allowing me to speak today and just taking a look at my photos and documents. I'm here because I want to emphasize my concerns for my farm and implore the council to think critically on the special permit being discussed today, as it does affect a generational farm next door. I'm pleading the town council to be proactive when considering the damage that has already been caused by development within this watershed. I am requesting the town to critically consider Bowler Engineering special permit or provide Bowler to provide a thorough buffer zone and insurance that runoff will not further damage the property. If you would like more photos of the erosion, I have plenty if you're interested. Otherwise, I very much appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you, McKenna. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak against this? No one else wishing to speak against it, we'll turn it back over to you for your rebuttal.
So just for the record, I did want to state a few objections to the testimony you've just heard. The packet of information which handed up contained quotes from emails, which I would characterize as hearsay, so I'd like to note that on the record. Additionally, to the extent the testimony you just heard involved opinions related to stormwater, I would object to that because the witness was not proffered or tendered as an expert witness in that field. Just wanted to note that for the record. We recognize, however, the importance of the comments and wanted to state that this plan, the site plan you see before you, has been developed and prepared consistent with the town standards, which require us to control at the property line for certain storm events. So we recognize that there are stormwater issues or can be stormwater issues. The Unified Development Code addresses those, and this plan has been designed with those standards in mind and is consistent with those standards. So, we're protecting the surrounding properties as is required under the Unified Development Code. Oh, I'm sorry. I also want to state an objection to some of the photos that were introduced to the extent they were augmented. Just don't know what it's pointing to, so we just want to state that objection as well. But thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Is there any other comment you would like to make to what he just said?
I'm a resident. I'm not an engineer or an expert. I've lived in Clayton on that road my whole life. That farm is very important to me, so I just speak from what I've seen. And I've only, unfortunately, got notice of this meeting a couple weeks ago, so this is the best I could do in 2 weeks from the notice.
Well, you did a good job in a short period of time. I think you've created some strong awareness. I do think that you have to have some understanding that this is a quasi-judicial process, and a lot of what he has brought to our attention insofar as the expertise, advice, and credibility has, a pretty substantial impact on council's deliberation on this. But I do think it is also fair to acknowledge that your family has been in Clayton for a very long time. And this is not the first time that this council has heard about impacts from development going further downstream. And when you take a crossing where the cows could walk across and now a bull can get buried in 5 feet, that's some pretty substantial downstream, impacts. So just a little clarification. All right. So if there's, we've had rebuttal, is there any other questions that you have before I call you into deliberation? All right. All right, so now I'll call the council into deliberation and allow you to proceed. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you to everyone here tonight who is a part of this. I know it's a lot of work to get a project to this point, so staff hours and everyone's time who went into this. I do have a couple of concerns about this plan as proposed. First off, as noted in finding of fact number 4, the current zoning is OI, which has a maximum density of 12 units per acre for apartments. So I certainly acknowledge that this use is consistent with the zoning. However, as we know, oftentimes our current zoning does not match up with our future land use plan, and that is the case here. I want to be careful with this. I know the future land use map is meant to be adaptable, but I do want us to be intentional anytime we receive a proposed use that doesn't align with it. I can see both sides of this issue, so I completely understand the applicant's point that this parcel is adjacent to an area designated as a neighborhood center, and that designation does allow for higher density. However, our comprehensive growth plan does envision this parcel as medium density, and this proposed use is double or triple that. I do not think that finding of fact number 4 has been met, but I look forward to hearing what the other council members and our attorney think about that. To further mention the density, there was a good point made in the commentary that this use provides transition in density from the existing apartments closer to Highway 42 to the surrounding residential and agricultural uses beyond the parcel. I think that the idea of a transition like that is smart, and I appreciate the applicant's comment in the permit application that these apartments feature, to use their words, a cube configuration rather than the more familiar linear style. That does, I think, in my mind, foster the feeling of a transition from higher density to lower density. However, I do feel like there's an opportunity or even maybe an obligation here to make a better transition. My last concern involves connectivity and pertains to finding of fact number 2 and access points. As I look at this parcel and I think about future land use for that surrounding area, I wonder what sort of development there might be in the future on the adjoining parcels, and the fact that there's no room in the proposed plan for connections there to the south mainly, I believe, and you can correct me on that if I'm wrong. You know, I do think if there is some way to have a stub out or plan for future connection, that does help support finding of fact number 2. And I also think that that's in the town's best interest. And that's all I have. Thank you.
I would like to echo Councilwoman Archer's comments as well. I feel that it does not meet the finding of fact number 4. It did not meet the 2040 and does not meet the 2045 based on the our land use plan and what we have designated it for, as well as when we talk about the connectivity between this parcel versus potential future parcels. I know there may be a stub out there, but that's, I mean, it doesn't seem like it's a through street like you would typically think of in a typical adjacent neighborhood, or going from one parcel to the next. But like I said, I do not think it meets finding of fact number 4 because of the 2040 and 2045 comp plan.
All right, anyone else? So what are the wishes of the council?
After considering the competent material and substantial evidence presented, including the application and materials of record, I would move to deny SUP application 2021-74-SUP, Amelia Church Tribute Community Special Use Permit.
I'll second.
And as part of my motion before a vote, I'm sorry for not knowing this. Should I read the finding of facts as part of that? Okay. Just to clarify, it's been a while since I've done specials. I'm basing the motion on So in other words, if I have one finding of fact that I feel is not met, but another council person has more than one, would they amend the motion, or how does that work?
Go ahead and get yours into the record, and let's see what they are, and then
Thank you.
go from there.
Okay. This motion is based on the following findings. Number one, the application will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plans as submitted and approved. Number two, the application meets all required specifications and conforms to the standards and practices of sound land use planning in the Town Code of Ordinances or other applicable regulations. Number three, the application will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property and will not be detrimental to the use or development of adjacent properties or other neighborhood uses. Number four, the application will adversely affect the adopted plans and policies of the town or violate the character of existing standards for development of the adjacent properties. And the evidence supported to support that finding is the designated density in the 2040 land use map versus the proposed density, which is higher.
We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Just one quick question when it comes to the density. When, we're kind of talking about the comp plan, are we looking for the medium density or higher density? Because if that's, if that's the reason of kind of shooting down the project, I think we could kind of, look into it a little bit better and just see how we can collaborate, with the community and see, if there's anything else we can do. Because, we are growing at a very fast pace. So trying to make sure we're focused on that and looking into the long term and looking into higher density as well will be a good thing.
Yes.
I agree, and I hear what you're saying, as well as the pros and cons of a project like this and the proposed use. I feel like I have more to say about what you've just posed. I'm a little nervous during a quasi-judicial hearing, to kind of go off on that. So I guess what I would want to state is I hear you, and I reiterate what I said earlier about all the work that goes into bringing a project like this to this point. However, I'm not going to add to anything about that personally. Anyone else can feel differently.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Well, I'll wait till the discussion is done, but before you go forward with a vote, a couple points of clarification. Ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Councilwoman Archer mentioned the lack of connectivity, which I think also supports finding number 2, and that it does not comply with the land use plans, plural, 2040 and 2045, I think goes to both finding number 2 and number 4. And so if you concur with that, I'd suggest amending the motion to reflect that.
Thank you for pointing that out. I do concur with that, and that's why I mentioned what I did about the connectivity. I just wasn't totally comfortable with the wording on that, but thank you for clarifying. So I would like to go ahead and amend my motion. Is that how that would work?
Correct.
To include for finding of fact number 2, the application does not meet all required specification and does not conform to the standards and practices of sound land use planning in the Town Code of Ordinances or other applicable regulations, and that would be regarding roadway connectivity within the proposed use. In addition, as noted, I could also amend the evidence supporting finding of fact number 4, that to use the word plans, plural.
All right.
And plans also apply to number 2.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
And we still have a second?
Yeah, still a second.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Thompson.
I just want to say that this is probably one of the more difficult decisions that we've seen in a long time. I do want to commend the applicant, the manner in which it was presented, the expert testimony. You had everything very well put together, and that's refreshing for us as a council that you came with your A game on. And I want to highly commend you on that. This is an extremely difficult decision as we try to weigh, whether you've met the findings of fact or not. So I just want to make sure we relay that to you, regardless of how this decision plays out, that you brought your A game, and as a council person, that's important. And I feel that you brought all the players to the table that need to be here.
All right. Anyone else?
Yes, I will also like to say, this is, I think, in future references, if we are ever kind of looking into this, I think, looking into the higher density and into the connectivity would be good for looking into the long term. So when we do have these judicials, we'll be able to kind of, create a better long term and consistency within our plan as well as we continue to grow.
All right. Anyone else? All right. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. So because the SUP was denied, there is no need for any action on wastewater allocation. Up next, under new business, is the UDC project update.
That's a lot of money walking out the door. $1,000 an hour.
All right, ready?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening again. I am actually very happy to be back in front of you to finally say that we're finally close to being able to get the Unified Development Code Update project underway. So I wanted to give you a brief presentation tonight, just to overview the project background, the consultant selection process we went through, the project scope, timeline, and of course the cost. So just a quick background, the 2045 growth plan, which was adopted in November of 21, included implementation recommendation to update the Unified Development Code. Council directed staff at that time to move forward with updating the code and move forward with this project. So based on that direction, staff released RFQ in early January, and we received responses in early February. To select the consultant, we formed an internal staff review team with representatives from planning, engineering, economic development departments. We provided a standard scoring rubric that was based on the evaluation criteria in the RFQ, and each review team member received the scoring rubric with copies of the RFQ to individually evaluate each RFQ response that was received. That staff review team met in late February to discuss the scores and ultimately select the consultant. The selected consultant was the top ranked after compiling all individual scores and was actually the top ranked consultant on all but one of the staff members. Planning staff then coordinated with selected consultant to develop the contract scope and fee. So what is the project scope? I have here the 7 tasks that are outlined that will be outlined in the contract. Initiation, diagnosis, annotated outline, drafting, testing, adoption, and finally delivery. Under initiation, the consultant is proposing to have an evaluation of our current UDC as well as other important documents such as our growth plan, our design guidelines, our engineering spec manual, and some other documentation. There will also be stakeholder interviews held during this task, as well as the project website will be up and running, and we'll have the first committee meeting. Moving on, task 2, we will receive a draft diagnosis report based on initial findings from task 1. This report will really tell us what is maybe not necessarily wrong with our UDC, but where there's some gaps and things we need to look at for updating, and provide some specific recommendations. Staff will have an opportunity to review and comment on that. We will then take that draft report to the committee again for committee meeting number 2, and then we'll have our first public forum during this task. Following on to that, we'll have our task 3, which is our annotated outline. And that draft annotated outline we'll receive is really going to be the roadmap for the new Unified Development Code. It'll establish organizational structure, appearance, numbering system, page layout, and system of navigational aids for users of the UDC. It will become really the outline for what our UDC will become. Again, we'll have an opportunity for staff review and comment on that annotated outline. We will have a third committee meeting to discuss annotated outline. We'll have an opportunity to come and present the annotated outline to Town Council, and we'll have our second public forum at this time as well. Finally, in the drafting task, we'll receive the initial draft of the new Unified Development Code, again, based on input received during the previous 3 tasks. Staff will have an opportunity to review and comment. We'll have up to 4 committee meetings to review that draft, and then we'll have our third public forum as well. Task 5 will go to testing, which this is one thing that this consultant, this was one that I think this consultant really was the only one that had this task in the scope. And so it's one of the reasons we were all very impressed with it. So they will staff and the consultant will identify 5 recently developed sites for testing the draft UDC. So on the consultant team, they will have a group of engineers that will prepare a hypothetical plan based on the draft UDC provisions. Staff will then receive those site plans and will review them based on the draft UDC. And then after that, we'll hold the first workshop with stakeholders to again give the stakeholders now an opportunity to see the draft UDC, to see how a hypothetical site plan could look under the draft UDC, and get comments from those stakeholders. Based on the comments from stakeholders and staff, the consultant team will revise hypothetical site plan, and then we'll have a second stakeholder workshop to show how the plan was revised based on the comments and collect additional feedback from the stakeholders at that time. And finally, we'll receive a summary memorandum that will summarize that testing and the feedback. And the stakeholders that are in this task as well as task 1 is really going to be up to the town to select, but I do envision that to be a lot of our development community, our chamber, and other important stakeholders throughout town. We'll have an opportunity to select those specific stakeholders through this process. And then the next task will be the adoption. So we'll receive the adoption-ready document. Again, staff will have an opportunity to review and comment on that. Finally, we'll move into our public adoption process with our public meeting with the planning board, where ultimately we will get a recommendation from them. And then I'll move to the public hearing with the town council. And then finally, we'll receive the adopted version of the UDC from our consultant, including all the digital files. The consultant's also going to help us prepare revised application forms, whether that be true paper application forms or outlines that can then be shifted into a new online application system will remain to be seen, but that is an option we have. And then, of course, the consultant will provide some staff training on the new Unified Development Code. Project timeline is estimated to take about 80 weeks, which is a little bit shorter actually than what we had originally thought. Right now, the main touch points for Town Council and Planning Board is a Town Council presentation in Task 3. Expect that to happen late fall this year. And then we would have the Planning Board public hearing or public meeting we would expect to happen summer of next year. And then the Town Council public hearing and adoption should be early fall of next year. Finally, the project cost is $130,000. That does include some contingency funding. So we have in your packet tonight a request to approve a budget ordinance 2022-03-02 to provide funding for this project. Following approval of that, if the council does approve the budget ordinance amendment, staff would move forward with executing the contract, and we expect to be able to initiate the project by mid-March. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Questions or comments for staff? All right. Yes, ma'am.
I had a comment. First of all, I kind of chuckled when you said 80 weeks was faster than expected, but I totally get it. Of course, as most of you know, I was on the planning board for a few years before I ended up here, and there's just been so many things I've been looking forward to see improved, as I know staff has, and the regulated community has as well. So I had a comment pertaining to the steering committee for this UDO rewrite. Would this be an appropriate time to make that comment?
Sure.
Okay. I was going to throw out there to the council that we consider making our planning board the steering committee for the UDO rewrite, and I wanted to share my thinking behind that. We do have some recent appointments to the planning board, as well as a nice balance of veteran members on that board. They have been so far asking questions, doing their homework, but they also bring some fresh faces and in kind of not just the same old background and experience where they're kind of prompted to ask questions and think things through thoroughly. Another thing with the timing there, I know to some people 80 weeks seems like a fast turnaround. To me, that's a lengthy process, and because I've been involved with other steering committees before, I know how long it can slow things down, finding people, picking them, and then you have the question of sometimes people come up with other conflicts and they drop out of these steering committees, whereas planning board members, they've already had to interview for those spots. They've already been vetted. They're usually pretty committed to serving out a multiple year term. In addition, these people that are on the planning board already clearly have an interest in ordinances, and that's not necessarily an easy thing to find out there in the community either. They will also be the board that has to see these ordinances in effect on the projects that come through that they have to vote on. And just from a practical standpoint, in terms of timing, using an existing board also means you don't have to call special meetings and notice special meetings, and you can kind of hit the ground running and get started immediately. So those are just some thoughts I put together, and didn't mean to jump in and hog the discussion on this, but I just thought it was something that we could discuss now and throw out there and possibly even save more time and streamline this process. Oh, in addition, one thing I thought about with the planning board, there are so many opportunities built into this process for public input that I don't feel like using an existing board as the steering committee in any way reduces our ability to get public input. There will be multiple meetings at planning boards or elsewhere where people can come and give their comments. So that's my 2 cents.
For me, I don't really have a tremendous amount of heartburn with that, but I do think it's fair to mention that we do have a ready-to-go stakeholders group. The group of developers that met last week is another good option for this type of process. So before council actually decides one way or the other, I'd just like to give some consideration to that ready-made stakeholders and maybe see how we could merge some of that together, maybe. But otherwise, I completely understand how more quickly it can be expedited by using the planning board that we have. But I do think we got a ready-made stakeholders group kind of in the oven, and I don't mind seeing some of that pulled into this. Okay.
You mentioned the word stakeholder. Is the stakeholder group separate from the steering committee?
Yes, so
okay.
The stakeholder group would be separate, but they would, and I certainly have, planned and envisioned that they would be a very important stakeholder. So they would be involved in the initial task one initiation, stakeholder interviews, and then I would definitely see that group as being involved in the testing phase for the stakeholder part. And as Ms. Archer mentioned, all the planning board meetings are public, and so there's nothing that would keep anyone that's not a planning board member from attending and providing comment at those planning board meetings. We can certainly structure them to ensure we have public comment session when, around the UDC whenever we're discussing that. And then just one more item to Councilmember Archer's point about potentially using the planning board as steering committee. They are seeing a lot less these days because of the 160D amendments we'd previously done to the to the code with, you know, them not having to see site plans anymore. So they do have a lot more bandwidth. And that's another reason, you know, to really consider using them as the primary steering committee because, again, it's a ready set group. They already have standard meetings set, and they have the bandwidth to really be able to put a lot of time into this, you know, fairly easily.
Do you have a vision for where like Board of Adjustment would get pulled into this mix?
We would probably look at the Board of Adjustment as a stakeholder group.
Okay.
And then, I mean, obviously, you know, I will be providing regular updates to, you know, to the Board of Adjustment, to the Planning Board, and to y'all as we move through this process, even if the consultant isn't necessarily involved.
Okay, cool. So, great. Mr. Casey.
I'm not opposed to Councilwoman's recommendation, but for a steering committee, typically how many people are on a steering committee of this capacity, and then also has the consultant given any indication of how many he would want to be on this steering committee?
The consultant, and typically with steering committees on a project like this, you don't want more than about 10 to 12 folks on it, and you know, a little bit less can actually be good. The problem when you get too many folks is that sometimes you do have folks that just choose not to want to speak, and then you also run into the problem when you have a lot of folks on of people dropping off. The other issue, you know, as Councilmember Archer did mention, is that forming an outside steering committee will take some additional time. You know, we'd have to develop the process for that, how we're going to form that committee and whatnot, and that could add some relatively significant time to this process that is already, you know, we've trimmed it to 80 weeks. It was actually originally, the consultant had originally discussed this taking more like 2 years. So it's already a trimmed process in order to try and get this done in a timely manner while still making sure we go through the process properly.
I have another question.
Go ahead.
So is anybody on the stakeholder group, developer stakeholder group, a member of the planning board as well?
That I am not sure. I do not know who is on that stakeholder committee at this time, or that stakeholder group, but you know, we do have a developer who is on the planning board, Mr. Lipscomb, who's been served on the planning board for quite a while. So I do feel that we have that voice on the planning board.
Ms. Archer.
Just to clarify with that, I think there's actually 2 people or more. There's at least 2 people on the planning board that would be considered stakeholders out of the 9-member board.
Mr. Sims.
Thank you. I might have missed it. So how many for the steering committee?
It really varies. I mean, I've seen large steering committees, I've seen smaller ones. I think our consultant has said, you know, if we were to form a steering committee, look for probably that 10 to 12 members, really, and that may even be a little bit much, but once you get above 10 or 12 members, it really becomes a little bit more difficult to keep it going, and you end up not having as much participation.
So this is a comment. I agree with what you said, Mr. Mayor, and I agree with partially with what Councilwoman Andrea said. But one of my concerns with the planning board is the fact that it's nothing negative, but we have a lot of new individuals on there. And we start talking about something as important as this, I would kind of want to see maybe what you're talking about in all aspects on both committees, a mixture of seasoned individuals that understand how these things have affected X, Y, and Z. So I'm a little bit concerned as far as if we just use that are all those individuals going to, again, they're new, not saying they're not, you know, researching and doing, but to what extent on something that is really, really big here for the planning department?
Okay.
I understand that concern as well, and I did consider that. I just wanted to throw out there that 1/3 of the planning board, I just know this because I go to their meetings, is what I would consider veteran, because the chair currently, I believe he has at least 3 years experience. The vice chair has been so many years, I can't remember. And then another member of that board has been on there for a significant amount of time. So at least 1/3 of that board does have quite a history with ordinance in the town.
Okay. All right. Yes, quickly.
Well, I mean, I guess this is most important that we get this right, because this is very important. We've heard a lot of feedback from the developer community, but then I think we need to try to do this as quickly as we can too. So, I mean, is this something we have to act on or make a decision on?
Not tonight.
Okay,
It's
good.
not on the
Good.
agenda.
Just a
It's
discussion.
just a topic for
All right.
discussion.
I'm in favor, I mean, I'm okay with what she's suggesting, and maybe, or a deviation of that.
All right, so I think probably what's best is to, let's get a culmination for this council of a list of the planning board members with some longevity dates of service. I think we need to find out from our stakeholders group of developers that met last week who they are. And then I think we can have the same information with Board of Adjustment maybe, and then we can culminate a group out of that, you know. And at the end of the day, we may just want to go with planning, or we may want to add a few people and pull a few people from planning and just create a customized group. But I don't know everybody on the planning board, so therefore I need, you know, more information to be able to review that. Are y'all good with that? Okay. Ms. Archer?
Okay.
Okay. All right.
You do have an action item related to this, and that would be approval of the budget ordinance amendment.
I make a motion to adopt ordinance 2022-03-02.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the adoption ordinance 2022-0302. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. All right, I'm calling for a 15-minute recess. Meeting back to order. And up next on the agenda will be the fire department internship.
Go ahead and ask Chief Sutphin to come up as well. Mayor and council, you may remember as part of the FY22 budget, 4 positions for internships were approved, 1 in finance, 1 in customer service, 1 in communications, and 1 in engineering. The fire department's recently come to me and requested the additional internship for some of their needs, particularly on the emergency management side of the house. So I'll let Chief Sutphin give a little bit more context.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Deputy Fire Chief Matt Sutphin. Yeah, this was an idea we kind of tossed around for the past year, me and some of the staff, after we saw the success the communications team had with CAT and some of the other departments. And we really didn't want to go asking for new positions under emergency management or fire prevention yet. I wanted to get some data and justify the needs. So we figured a summer intern program would help best in some of that to help show that data and justify the needs. As you know, Amy's Sharon, emergency management coordinator. She oversees special events, EOC operations, part of our communications with the fire department and Facebook marketing. Her job has expanded a lot really quick. Also, fire prevention education, we're adding more students to the schools, daycares, private schools. And using our guys on apparatus every day isn't always ideal with the amount of calls we're running now. So this summer intern would kind of assist Amy in some of her roles as looking after special events, concert series, Harvest Festival, helping coordinate some of that. Also, we have an idea that we're still brainstorming on a kids fire camp to do every year. Would it be, first graders, second graders, and bring them in for like a week, half a day, and do like a firefighting 101 for kids, just to kind of get them brought in already. So we have a bunch of different roles that we think this person would be able to assist with. So, and again, some of the funding this year, I had some part-time money left over due to COVID, where we weren't bringing people in. So coming up, if we start in the summer, we'd have some funding left available. In the future, we may need to budget some additional funding for that internship program. But as you know, the high school program, they're bringing some good students out of there that's going to 4-year degrees. So I'm hoping we can get some of them signed up. And as they graduate college at 4-year degree, some of them may not want to be a firefighter. They may want to go into the admin role, emergency management. So I'm hoping if we can get them early, we'll better retain them for their future. So
I like it. Questions or comments? All right, if not, I'll entertain some sort of motion.
Sounds good. I'll make a motion to authorize staff to proceed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to authorize staff to proceed. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I think Matt has one other thing maybe he wanted to let you guys know about today.
I wanted to let you all know, at 10:43 this morning, the ladder officially went into service. After months of training, a little waiting on equipment, as you know, everything's on delay, and getting staff and hired, the ladder is in service, and it has 5 on each shift, so a total of 15 between all 3 shifts, and it ran its first call shortly after it went in service. So you will see it out and about a lot more. Still working through some operational training, but it is in service. So I just want to let y'all know that.
So this is a very petty question, but when we left the recreational groundbreaking the other day, I came back by the fire station and they were out there washing that vehicle. So I want to know, how long does it take to wash a ladder truck? Because the ladder was like way extended.
Yeah, so if it was extended, that's part of the maintenance they have to do on it.
Okay.
So they have to extend the ladder all the way out, inspect all of it, grease it, clean it. So hours a week to maintain that, to keep it, make sure we meet our warranty needs and this and that. So
yeah, I mean, I knew they weren't looking for busy work, but I was like, wow, that really, we don't ever get to see, we don't ever get to see how much maintenance.
And I will say the crews over there, they're very proud of that truck, and they spend a lot of time training and keeping it clean and polished. So all the trucks we ever bought, that's about the proudest I've seen them. And we let them be very involved in the speccing of that truck, which we haven't always done in the past. They designed that truck. They designed it, and honestly, in the past, we've had to go, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that. I haven't heard one complaint about this truck. So great. That's how we're moving forward in the future, is letting our, from the firefighters all the way to chief officers, be very involved in everything we do at the department. So
awesome.
It goes a long ways.
Thank you, sir.
Thank y'all.
Mr. Thompson.
I just wanted to tell you and Chief Barbie that I admire that you have put the training, education, and safe operation of the vehicle ahead of putting it in service hastily. It's nice to get something new and shiny, and the first thing you want to do is get it out there, and I think you've done it the right way, and that helps us limit liability, but it also helps us be better prepared to use it so that when we do go out there to use it, it's second nature and it's not something new that they're having to learn. So I think y'all done a great job with really going about it the right way this time.
Awesome. All right, and then moving along to staff reports, begin with the town manager.
Mayor and Town Council, just a couple quick updates. Just wanted to update you on the budget. This week we'll be meeting with all the department heads. A couple of them will be pushed to next week just based on availability, but we intend to have the first pass of the budget this week. With that, following up next week, we'll be doing a pretty in-depth CIP review, pretty much going through, kind of checking out where we are currently, as we know that the economy and the current market is affecting our projects already in process. So we're really trying to take a look at what needs to be done next year so that we can get a better grasp on where we're at. With regard to the wastewater treatment plant, we're still on track to receive our guaranteed maximum price for consideration sometime in late April. That would come before you sometime in May when staff has had a chance to go through and review it and possibly do a little bit of negotiation at that point. With that, to preempt that, one of the things that our finance department has done recently is we did do a request for some financing options through private banks. We actually had a very favorable response last week that we will intend to have some conversations with the LGC about to see how we could possibly get to a point where we could lock in those rates and get to an approval from the LGC. Right now, we're targeting probably the June LGC meeting to get that done, which would then put our locking in the guaranteed maximum price subsequent to that within probably mid-June. Their meetings are in early June, so coming out of that, if we were fortunate enough to get approval from them, we would go ahead and lock in within a couple weeks of that. So more to come there, but certainly good news on the financing front. Last thing, just want to have a reminder of next council meeting, in advance of the council meeting, there will be your first special meeting for this one because it was outside of the agreed upon first meeting of the month. However, the first work session, particularly specific to the Old Town Hall property, will be next, or 2 Mondays from now, the 21st, from 3 to 5 p.m. here at the Town Hall. With that, the consultant that did perform the report will be available for you to discuss his findings. So with that, that's it for me.
All right, thank you, sir. Town Clerk?
No reports, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Lionsgate Bridge and Trail, Joshua.
Mayor, Town Council, quick update regarding the Lionsgate Bridge. If you recall, a month or so ago, I brought another update to you regarding the status of the bridge. If you recall, this is the section from Shadboat Lane down to the community center to the pool. There is a private section of greenway as well as bridge. In reaching the end of its useful life, Building Inspections Department has condemned and closed it due to safety of the general public. If you recall, we had proposed to the HOA a coordinated effort. We have some money that was allocated in this fiscal year's budget. We proposed kind of a shared project, and finally, this about 2 weeks ago, we did receive a response from the HOA. I have provided the documents to you, that response letter, as well as the original letter that was sent to the HOA proposing a shared and coordinated project. A couple quick things to note. Basically, the HOA is concerned about financially funding and helping in supporting the project. It does allude to the design and survey, which that was included in the table. The table in the town's letter on page 2 does include design and survey, and there's $20,000 in there. And then it does note the third paragraph, based on the above, the HOA board would be willing to commit some funds toward the removal of the existing bridge. No set or specific dollar amount was provided in response to that. We see there's some great benefit to the greater public if this connection was public and a final connection was in here. If you recall, there is some options, or a option to reroute the bridge around the environmental feature. So we've got some options. Our goal was to have a coordinated effort here. We still are not getting and making as much progress on that coordinated project as we would like. Where we're at now, we do have some additional funds that we have found that we can work towards this, and the options would be to completely to do nothing, to leave it in a private state, leave the private bridge. I don't know that that does the greater good of the public service. We could continue to try to see if we can get a specific number from the HOA, other than what they would be willing to contribute to this. Or we can proceed and get the job done with other additional town dollars. I believe we can find those, but certainly would want your support before taking this on as an initiative completely by town dollars. There is an existing section of Greenway that is in poor condition as well, so we would want to really redo that section of asphalt as well. We're anticipating with the 25% contingency about $150,000 project to completely do it. So with that, we are prepared to, if that's the wishes of council, to go ahead, if you guys would be supportive, that we would just take that on, or we could certainly look other options in terms of this particular bridge and with its closure. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions. If there's any specifics, or we certainly, like I said, can move on with your support. We also want to be mindful, though, that there are other private things out there. Be mindful of taking over and redoing private bridges, private trails, and just the precedent that sets. Goal would be to have a coordinated effort here, but we're not making a whole lot of progress.
So where would the $150,000 come from?
I can't say for sure, but I believe we can find the money in this year's budget. I think we can work through that in terms of some money from Parks and Rec, potentially some other works in Public Works and Streets. I believe we can find that money if that's the direction we want to take.
So what did you say the HOA would commit to? They wouldn't commit a nominal amount, but I think you said to removing the bridge. Is that correct?
Yeah, so third paragraph, based on the above, I believe the HOA board would be willing to commit some funds towards the removal of the existing bridge. They'd indicate they would be willing to provide some easements to us, which would be needed if we're going to take it over all as public.
That was going to be my next question. Whose property is it?
Everything that we can see, it all appears to be private. So there's no public easements that we can find. It was never dedicated as public. It appears to be all private.
I'm not in favor of public dollars working on their failure.
Ms. Archie.
I hear that as well. I can see both sides of this. Obviously, a lot of Clayton residents use that portion of sidewalk who do not live in that adjacent development. However, that development has a lot of amenities and a lot of people in there. And when I think of the average citizen who doesn't live there, driving by and knowing that their tax money paid for the sidewalk that's running alongside the development, I just feel like that's going to give some people heartburn. I do, however, see both sides of the issue. It is an eyesore. It's a safety concern. I'm really surprised that this is the response we're getting from that HOA. I don't want to set a precedent either for the message to be sent that other HOAs can kind of let something like that evolve and not take responsibility. Really, I'm not in favor of it either. However, I'm also not in favor of leaving a safety and an eyesore concern like that.
I think it's a prime opportunity for a public-private partnership, but I think it would be to the tune of 50-50. I don't think it should be any less than 50-50. And I think they need to be made aware that maybe we have council support for a public-private partnership with the town of Clayton contributing 50% of the funding, but HOA would have to chime in with the other 50%. And I think in the same letter, they need to be notified that, this is an extreme liability and hazard for them. And it could be more costly than $75,000 in the future going forward. But to Councilman Archer's point, I don't think that we can start saving the day for the negligence of HOAs, even when we've got good citizens and good families living out there. So that's just where I stand. Mr. Thompson.
I wouldn't have as much heartburn with it if it was ours. And if we were to take it, if we put public dollars into this, it would need to be ours. and not theirs. I'm not in favor of putting any money into anything that's going to remain their property.
Agree. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I'd agree to the 50-50, like you said. If we could, I guess, try to go back and figure that out or negotiate with them. But I guess put some timetable on it, if possible. Sooner than later, put some sort of time frame on it.
Okay. So if I'm understanding correctly, the direction to go back and to continue negotiations and shoot to get a 50-50 coordinated project. Okay.
Yeah. And if that's a failure, then if we're going to fix it as the town of Clayton, then that property gets deeded to the town of Clayton.
Yes, if we put money into it, yes, the intent would be that it is public maintained and we'll take it from there. So, and that's another, selling point too, in that currently they are responsible for maintenance of that. We would be willing to take that on in this coordinated effort, and that's been portrayed, but still working through all of that, so, okay.
Sure.
You don't have to answer this now, not trying to put anyone on the spot, but I'm also just sort of curious if this is some kind of code or safety violation. I know I've been on that greenway and it's pretty abrupt stop, and if you were to continue, I think you would fall right through the bridge if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, just throwing it out there, curious if that's a code or a safety violation from something in our ordinances.
Yeah, we can certainly look at if there's anything we need to do to safeten it up in terms of just dead end ahead or, signage or something like that. We can certainly look at that.
Yeah. The only comment I would have there, town attorney can correct me, but it is a private, Greenway is a private bridge, so it would be incumbent upon the HOA or whoever is the liable property for any issues to take that upon themselves, but we can certainly try to reach out and see if we can't get something done just for the greater good.
Awesome. Up next is going to be Ethan. You want to tee him up?
Yeah, so I'm going to ask Ethan Poppy, Energy Services Technician, to come up and provide some information and details on an opportunity that we have to partner with some other agencies and look at some solar. So with that, I'll pass it over to Ethan. And just at conclusion, we'll be looking for your support for us to move forward with it. Ethan.
So recently, Electricity has notified us of an opportunity of working with the NC State Clean Technology Center. The Clean Technology Center had received a grant from the Department of Energy to essentially act as a consulting service for community solar farms for communities throughout North Carolina. As part of that, essentially, we would receive a free consultants for building a community solar project in Clayton. It would be a solar farm that the town would operate and maintain, but our residents would be able to participate in. Other towns have used a subscription fee. They would subscribe to a solar panel or more than one solar panel, and they'd receive the credits from the production of energy of that solar panel, which would be larger than the subscription fee. So the study would involve things like site location, cost to install, operate, and maintain, and the best way of allowing the public to participate. So deposits, subscription fees, the amount of fees, how feasible it is for the town. Part of the reason that we'd want to do this is both to have solar in Clayton, but also to allow people that wouldn't normally be able to participate in solar to receive solar energy. So people that are not homeowners, that do not live in single-family homes or live in shaded areas where solar just isn't a good idea for them, they would be able to participate. So we've begun work on the study. We're providing the information they requested in order to determine if it would be feasible for the town of Clayton. So we're not committing to building a solar project, but we are committing to looking into whether it'd be a good option for us. So we've begun that process, and we're pretty excited for the results.
Awesome. I think that's great. So do I hear consent for them to continue moving forward with that?
Consent.
Consent.
Move forward.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I can, one further update.
Yes.
Real quick here, I do want to just speak to the work on Main Street. Appreciate everyone's patience, including the public, as we work through that project. We were successful in replacing 2 of the manholes and constructing a new manhole. So manholes have been reconstructed. A lot of the inflow has been taken away from that. If you recall from when Amy provided an update, this was really broken up into 2 phases. One, we got to address the manholes, and then we've got to come in and address the pipe. That pipe has been in Main Street for many, many years in poor condition. digging and replacing is just not an option, so we've evaluated other technologies. There's a technology, CIPP, it's cured in place pipe, where basically, now that we've got the access points from the manholes, put a liner in and go in and actually repair the pipe from the inside without actually having to dig up Main Street, which would be much more difficult. So we are prepping for phase 2. We one night, and we are looking at the week of the 20th. We're working through scheduling with some of the businesses, working through with the contractor what exactly night that would be, but this will be one final night. We've got the manholes, we'll get the pipe lined, and we'll have Main Street in that section for several years finished up and buttoned up. And so appreciate patience, public's patience as we work through that. We'll be sure to release all the details when we have everything scheduled for that one final night of the CIPP lining.
Awesome.
Thank you.
On an individual note, can you please have someone look at Johnson Drive and get us an update on Johnson Drive? Johnson Drive is not doing well. I'm seeing some severe cracks all along Johnson Drive. I'm seeing multiple potholes that are increasing what seems to be every month, and I'm getting concerns from neighbors about that specific drive. So I don't know if your guys can just check it out and let us know what you think about Johnson Drive, whether it's some asphalt this spring that can help ease the potholes. It used to be where you could ride over the center of the pothole, but now it doesn't matter if you go left or right of center, you're still hitting another pothole. So
not from here off the top of my head. We'll take a look. We'll
yes, that'd be great. Thank you. All right. Any other staff? Mr. Pierce.
Mr. Mayor, Council, good evening. I've got a couple of quick transportation updates and things coming up I just wanted to give a heads up on. First is an exciting one. We've talked about future Interstate 42 and the Clayton bypass. It's been given preliminary approval by AASHTO, which please don't make me undo that alphabet soup, but it's one of the authorizing bodies there, and FHWA is looking to give final approval on it. But that would mean that the Clayton bypass in relatively short order would go away and be Interstate 42 from the interchange at I-40, which will be where 540 will also connect here in the next year or two. And then all the way to where Business 70 and 70 at the east end of town converge. So that would be one of the first segments to get the designation and be full Interstate 42. And that aligns well with that 540 project as well, because as they're doing signage, their sign packages can all have Interstate 42 on there as well. So that's a great thing, great economic development thing, because that means when we're doing RFIs, we're that much closer to an interstate, which is always a favorable piece. We are, as part of that, though, something I wanted to give a heads up on, is something we're going to be meeting with DOT and county staff on here soon, is they are considering renaming some different roads. And so that could be segments of NC 42, most likely the western segment there being renamed, as well as getting rid of the business designation on Business 70, because there will be no need to have a Business 70. It can just be just US 70. So that's going to be coming forward, and we're going to be listening to their proposals and working with them here at a meeting in the next few weeks here. So I just want to give you a heads up on that, but exciting to have our first interstate here. So two other quick things. We're working with Go Triangle, who is heading up the commuter rail project. March 23rd, they'd like to have they're going to be doing, they did a larger region-wide webinar and meeting about the commuter rail project. They're doing specific ones in communities, so they're going to do a Clayton-Johnston County one. They pulled together the realtors, the chamber, and the town on that, and looking to do some watch parties and interactive Q&A on those. So March 23rd, we're looking to hold one here at Town Hall, and I think the realtors are going to do one at their office in Smithfield. So invite the public, invite all of you in accordance with all the public meetings and all the fun stuff like that to come participate and be part of that conversation. Similarly, the bus rapid transit system that Campo is working on is going to be doing a similar public input session. We don't have details on that, but sometime this spring. And lastly, I just wanted to mention the Johnston County has been working with the Upper Coastal Plains Planning Organization and NCDOT on their Johnston County Neuse River Trail feasibility study. And why that is important is that's looking at the 15-mile segment from Clayton to Smithfield and how to get there. And the 3 alignments they're looking at are one that goes along Glen Laurel, one that goes along the northern border of the river, and then one that goes out to Buffalo Road. So that's going to be open here through March 25th. And as we look to kind of build that system out and expand the Greenway and the Mountains to Sea Trail, just that would be important that for folks to know that that's out there and to make their feelings known in terms of what that alignment should be and look at the feasibility of that and give their comment.
Awesome. Questions or comments for staff? Mr. Thompson?
I'm glad you talked about the renaming of 42 West. I've had that concern all along that we're going to call something Interstate 42, and then it's going to cross Highway 42. And so for emergency responders, somebody calls 911, they're just going to say, I'm on 42. And then from a economic development standpoint, even just from a community, you're trying to give somebody direction somewhere and you say, turn on 42. So I think that's going to be a necessary step as that moves forward, because I've got a lot of concern that if we keep the name the same, that it's just going to lead to terrible confusion in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Mr. Casey?
Sorry to put you on the spot, but the commuter rail meeting on the 23rd, do we have a time on that yet?
On the completion of the study?
No, you said March 23rd, there's a commuter rail meeting.
I believe they're going to do it in the evening. So by the end of the week, we'll have all the information out. I think it's going to be a 6 to 7, 6 to 7:30, something along those lines.
All right. Anyone else? Thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you.
All right. I'll now open the floor for informal discussion and public comment. Anyone wishing to speak, please step forward and state your name for the record.
Hi, my name's Heidi Lee Peach. I'm the proud owner of Heart to Hands Art Gallery and Studios, and I'm here to talk about where we've had a lot of, concerns getting people into the store. And we have a building that sits back far off the road, and comments of people coming in to the store have said, we had no idea you're a business, we thought you were a house. And we hear it over and over again. We were using feather flags. We thought we could use them. We found out after our ribbon cutting that we couldn't use them, and our business has gone down 60%. So given that, that was able to draw attention from Main Street to us, and also it was able to bring people that now we have a 4-way stop sign, yay, that sees that we're a business because it said open. So I went around downtown, and I wasn't pointing fingers at anybody what people have and what we don't have, but we did do the sign permit. We were told a lot of things that we wanted to do, we couldn't do. We couldn't do the feather flag, so I'm here to kind of present on pictures, what I kind of see and envision from the time that we got the building. And before we spend any more money, I want to make sure that we're okay doing some of the ideas. We do have 3 facades on the building, so given that, I kind of went through and looked at some of the buildings that have 2 facades and they had 4 signs. We have basically 3 facades and only the 1 2-sided sign. The permit we were turned down on was, our idea was to do the sign that was structural on the land, to make that a mural for everybody in Clayton to enjoy and change it. And just because it's hand painted now, we were going to do it seasonally. And we wanted to have a post sign that was more on the front on 2nd Street. But that really doesn't help us anyway to get people in the building. So we're okay with using the structural sign. It's hard to see from Main Street. We don't draw any businesses from Main Street during special events. When the town does the punch cards or whatever, or the stamps to go to different businesses, they're not making people go to every single business. So we get skipped on that. We get skipped a lot on the sip and shops. We've been doing last Friday. We'll see how that goes. But without putting up like something near that structural sign that can draw attention, we're kind of stuck. I mean, it lights up at night, but I did take some pictures of some businesses that are using what looks like a house flag, but it says open. So we're trying to see if maybe we can do something like that. We are open more than our hours say because Monday and Tuesday are kept for private lessons. But we obviously can't open the gallery for that because we can't do the register and teach at the same time, but we are open. But we really want to let people know when we do have the gallery open, which is Thursday through Saturday from 11 to 5, and then we're open late on last Fridays. I did see Andrea at the farmer's market, and she had a feathered flag, and so I thought, well, maybe since we have the feathered flags, maybe we'll be able to look at all the rules, and maybe for special events we can use feather flags, maybe for last Friday or Sip and Shop or something, so that what we purchased, we actually purchased for them, and we're told we couldn't use any of them. So we're just kind of feeling out what maybe we can do, and we wanted to maybe put another sign on our building on the front that showed what our address was, because you'll see on the pictures, our address are so small, and we're 2nd Street, even though we're like on Smith, and you can also see us from Main Street. And we do have 3 entrances into the building. So we let the people that come for workshops use the entrance into the sunroom. And then we have another issue with the Main Street entrance where we did do the walkway that helps, and the town actually helped us with that, and we appreciate everything you've all done. But we have the walkway from Smith coming to the front, but we have a lot of parking that is on 2nd Street all the time in front of the building, and I don't mind that at all, because I really want everybody to have a place to park, honestly, and we're lucky we have side parking off Smith. But we would like to have our sidewalk painted yellow so that at least that part of the 2nd Street does not get blocked, because it does get blocked a lot. And I'm not pointing fingers. I really want to be able to do what other businesses do. When you look at the pictures, I want you guys to see what other businesses are doing. And when we go to do a permit, we were turned down, and we didn't really have any solutions, really. I would say, well, you'll look at the pictures I put like a little heart where our feather flags used to be. Then there's a sign that shows where our structural sign is that we're working with now. It's not going to be hand painted anymore. We're going to order a professionally made sign that's very colorful. And we'd like the building to continue to be colorful as we go forward. And I guess that's about it. I want to show you all pictures. I guess I didn't put them on a computer. I just brought them, and I'll give them out. And then since I just ad-libbed this, I'll look at my notes then and see if I missed anything. So, but
I think you can give your pictures to the clerk, and we will let her scan those and
Okay.
send them to the council.
Okay.
Yes.
And I also can type up pretty much what I was going to say. Well, I mean, I was going to read it, but I ended up saying it all. So I can type that up in a better form and send that to her. When's your last day? Oh, you have some time. So I can get that to you probably tomorrow. So, and that's it. So, did you guys understand what I was talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'd probably just ask her or have Ben to give her card on the way out so that she can have a conversation.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. All right. Anyone else?
Speak to that subject?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm Betty Scarborough. I'm a resident of 5 years of Parkview subdivision. And Parkview subdivision is located off of City Road, I'm sure you're all aware of. Across the street from it is a place called Legend Park. And when I first moved in, it was used, and then it just kind of fell by the wayside, and then suddenly I started to see that it was going without being mowed or anything, paying attention to it, nothing from the town. So I talked to the town a little bit. Turned out that that is an old dump site off a city road called dump site, whatever it was, city road dump site. And there was nothing posted. And then finally, when I made a few phone calls, they put the signs up that said, closed for mitigation, environmental mitigation. My understanding is that there, I guess, is a project somewhere. I don't know if it's with Joshua's office. I don't know if it's Ben's or whose it is. But I'd like to find out what's going on with it, because it's a serious situation because of the methane gas situation with the old dump site and what they've got to do to properly mitigate it, to avoid any problem with trees falling over maybe in hurricanes or whatever, and causing some distribution of that. I'm not very familiar with it. I'm not an engineer for it. But I would like to know what and who is doing anything with it, and where do we get answers in Parkview? There's 290 homes there, residents, which I'm one of them, and I'm on the HOA board there as a secretary, and we meet here in March 16th again for our annual, and I'd like to be able to tell them what's happening with it. It's beautiful. We're going to have Municipal Park right up the way finished, and we've got a greenway that goes up to it. And it's nice because they put the greenway down to connect to O'Neill, and it's beautiful. But here sits the overgrown Legend Park that looks really disgusting, and for bikers and people coming, bicyclists and walkers and that, coming through there wondering, you know, what? Environmental mitigation. What's happening? Who do we talk to? Where do we get the answers? What's the situation? Has it been a project that's just kind of gotten dropped?
So I don't know who needs to give her your card, but staff needs to give her, and you can have some updating conversations to let her know what's going on with all that.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I would recommend Joshua, if you'll provide her your card. That is a project that is being undertaken by the Department of Environmental Quality. Every time we talk to them, they tell us it's moving up the list, it's getting close. I think just as recently as this week, or today, I guess, essentially, there was a conversation with them. They've had some staff turnover, and just by sheer volume, they have approximately between 300 and 400 projects on their list. And what we were told, I think just today, is that they average about 7 a year that they're actually able to move forward. So while they've been telling us we're moving up the list, do not know how close to the top of that list to get within that 7, the number of projects they're getting to. It is an environmental remediation project. There is some erosion along the stream side that they would be looking to solve through their remediation. I believe they're developing a plan with the consultant right now, but Joshua can certainly provide you some additional information, and we can certainly provide council with additional updates as we move forward.
Well, one of the things he mentioned was, when they have to go and do this, they've got to pull all the ground up and all the trash and all the smell, and that July is not going to be the most ideal time to do it. And, what is going to be the residents' information coming out about it when you're going to do it? I mean, hopefully you're making some sense out of it, and there's a lot of kids, and kids used to play in there, and kids still do that, play there and stuff. So kind of like to know what's going on. I mean, so are you, is there?
Yeah, we are certainly, again, we are trying to work with the state. It's a state-driven project.
What has to happen, the environmental protection? Is it government? Is it federal, or is it state?
Yeah, it's state regulated, so it's beyond Town of Clayton control. So we're at the mercy of the state government. And based on what Rich has just said, it could be years before the state is actually working on this project physically. But in the meantime, currently, they're trying to figure out a plan of mitigation for that, along with the other 200 or 300 projects they have across the state of North Carolina. So it's not in control of the Town of Clayton. But Joshua's going to get you can get Joshua's contact information, and he can give you more update.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
To speak, if you repeat it, I wasn't fast enough for getting up.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
I'm 80 this year, so I'm not really as fast as everyone else. But one of the co-op artists at Heart to Hands, and have spent a lot of time there. And I've also had my own businesses. I'm Charlene Thomas, I'm sorry. And I've had my own businesses, retail as well as service and counseling. And I don't want you to think that this is a frivolous request that Hardy is asking you for. Understanding the natural patterns of shoppers. On Main Street, you have very few problems. You can park your car at one end and literally go contiguously into stores as you want to shop, and everybody's happy and they think they've had a great day. Excuse me. But when you're talking about the businesses that are on the secondary streets in a town, people have to make a choice to go there. And sometimes there's difficult parking. Fortunately, where Heart to Hands is, there's not difficult parking. We've had difficulty in letting people know we're there. It's the best kept secret in town. We had the pandemic, and we understood that that was going to slow down traffic. We started putting up signs, and we started getting traffic, not rushing traffic like you have on Main Street, but continual. We've kept within the COVID guidelines and rarely had more than 4 or 5 people at a time in the shop. We had what do they call them, the banana signs? The big long signs up there, which were only up when the shop itself was opened. And all of a sudden, we're having all people come. They're seeing it from Main Street, they're coming through. Then somebody said, no, you can't have that sign there. I've sat there from 11 o'clock till 5 o'clock and not a soul walk in that store. And then somebody might come in and go, I had no idea you were here. Because we're in what looks like it could be a residential area. Now, if you go on the other side of the railroad tracks, you have something that looks more like it's some kind of a business. But when you're on the 2nd Street section, it looks not quite sure what it is. And so people aren't stopping in. So we're talking about wanting the community and wanting the town to recognize that we know we have businesses on the secondary streets as well, and we want to help you as much as we can. And that comes from being able to put up signage, let the people know that there's something there. Now, whether it's an arrow sign on Main Street, or it's a banana sign, or it's something that tells people, hey, you can come in here, it's a live shop, because it's people's livelihoods. And it's as important as anybody that's on Main Street. I don't know how long all of you have been here, but I came to Clayton in 1990 when you had 3 drugstores in a row and you had a little building for the police station and 1 police dog. And you've obviously changed a lot. But you can't forget the secondary people. You know, you have to help them. And Heart to Hands does need help in being seen. As I said, it's the best kept secret in town, and we've been open since, well, two years ago. And so think about that as you're looking at what is happening. The signs don't stay up all night. They're not bothering anybody. They're just saying, hey, we're here when we're here. And I just felt it was important to say what I had to say.
I will tell you, living in that neighborhood, that where you state the signs, the banana signs are not bothering anybody, it is bothering the neighbors. You have to keep in mind that you are directly across from residential. So everywhere else on Main Street that may be doing something different than what you're doing is not located across from a residential area. So I have heard complaints about the bright colored flags and this coming because that's a residential area. And people don't want to sit out in their yard and have to see all of that. And that's just something that's been shared with me. That's not necessarily the reason why things are, the way they are. So I think you have to be careful that, you have to give some consideration that you're across the street from residential.
Then my
It's a little
question
bit different.
becomes, why would you allow a business to open up in a residential area?
So I think the beginning, when that went from residential, it went to office. So I don't think it was ever designed to be retail. I think the CPA, I believe, that went in there was not someone who relied on retail walk-in to be successful. It was just an established service business. So so that's my
I can see it's a
understanding.
problem. It's a serious problem, but it's one that, you know.
I'd like to say that I asked the people across the street, it doesn't bother them. I haven't talked to the new owners at Morning Glory Inn, but that is also a business, and we hope to give them business because we hope to have out of town even artists that come in and teach workshops there. So I've had teachers not been able to find the business. I've had students not be able to find the business, and really, it's really kind of a traffic problem when they can't really find where you are. So I've got a lot of issues going on. And I've also asked the guy next door on the corner if he minds the banana signs. He doesn't either. So, but there are businesses that use flags that look like American flags that say open. And that's, if we can kind of come to an agreement to go towards something like that that's closer to the road, not necessarily like, because the structural sign is a structure. If we could put something with that only up when we are open, not for the classes or anything like that, just for the 3 days we're open, and maybe something we're allowed to do, maybe the feathered flags for an event. Because like Clayton Visual Arts has a feathered flag, the farmer's market has one. What do you?
But they're not located in residential communities.
Well,
They're not.
I know
The
they're
farmer's
not,
market is
but I mean,
not located in a residential
Are you going to hurt a
community.
business because we're there? I mean,
You know, it was your choice of location. It wasn't that the town said you have to go to this location.
so our neighbor next door, I thought she was coming too, Monique. So she's having problems too with the Clayton blinds and designs being found. So we do have our fence. It's our fence, and she has asked if she could put a sign on our fence to show. I don't have a problem with that. In fact, there's another business that was Eye the Eagle. Do you remember them? They were an art studio. They were not on Main Street, okay? They were back. They were allowed to paint their fence and do fun stuff on their fence. It would be fun for me to have something that would show attention that we are an art gallery, like maybe have things on the fence that aren't anything about our business, but fun stuff. Like, I'm afraid everything we do, we're going to get in trouble for. That's how it feels right now.
Well, I mean, before you do anything, you need to find out what the ordinances allow you to do.
Yeah.
That's
so-
number one.
Okay.
And number two, even the Eye of the Eagle was directly across the street from them, was not residential.
Well, there's a train track, and then it's residential across the street.
Yes, which is a much greater distance between point A and residential versus yours, which is a 20-foot street.
So the people across the street, if they wanted to put a business in there, they could. And also Bronwyn, who's down the street, her house is also, it's also zoned for having a business in there as well.
I don't know anything about that.
Oh, well, I'm just saying there are some houses that are also, they're zoned both ways that are on Second Street across the street from us. So, I mean, I'm not here trying to argue. I'm here trying to make I'm trying to solve our problem.
Right.
That's all.
I understand.
You know, so, and we didn't get a place on Main Street. We tried hard, believe me. We tried very hard.
It's 98% occupied. I can see why.
No, we tried to buy one. So, but I don't think it would have went well for that either. So it had other issues. But I would ask maybe if there could be a wayfinding sign on Main Street to find businesses on Second Street like they did for the businesses that are on First Street.
We can certainly look into that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
That would be helpful. And maybe one that would be on Second and Main. And also maybe one for Lombard and Main that would go down into Second Street because there's businesses down there. So I think everybody on Second Street could be struggling.
Thank
So
you.
I'm here to talk about the overlay and how we struggle.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Well, thank you.
Anyone else? Sir, Mr. Granis has been up like 3 times, so.
Good evening, Mayor and Town Council. First-time caller, long-time listener. My name's Michael Plumley. I live 105 Stonehenge Drive. I'm on Barber Mill, and I was actually at the library today researching. We're going to meet again, maybe at an evidentiary hearing for a development off of Country Lane in a couple weeks. But I wanted to come by here and talk about a few things. The main thing I just wanted to talk about today is going to be science. We're going to talk about culture when I visit again to talk about the evidentiary hearing, but science is changing a lot. And if I may, just a minute of your time, make an allegory. I was at the farmer's market this weekend. My background is behavioral economics, but last 5 years I've been doing agricultural tech startups overseas, working on doing something in Johnson County as well. And for anyone who has land or who has, maintained property, there's a chemical for us farmers called Roundup. Now, Roundup is available in the stores, but the science is changing on Roundup. It was initially in the 1970s. I can tell you today Roundup causes cancer, not because the lawsuits have been lost, but because even though it's available today, it's going to be discontinued in 2023 by Monsanto. Their reason is, and I quote, they've lost too much money on lawsuits that it causes cancer. What I want to say is I'm worried about what is science today and changing in the future. And really, to get to the point, the reason I'm here today is since the last town meeting in late February, I read a study about masks, specifically this called a surgical mask. We've learned a lot in the last 2 years since COVID. I'm learning now that these have something called titanium dioxide in them. Titanium dioxide is in sunscreen. It's inert. It's supposedly non-carcinogenic if it's ingested. But I wanted to mention that some new studies are coming out that the titanium dioxide in this could possibly be inhaled. And there is, let me put it this way, the non-carcinogenic amount is 0 in our lungs. I worry, is this the next Roundup? Is this the next asbestos? Is this the next cigarettes? To be honest, I'm really happy to see your smiling faces today. I said I'm a longtime listener. I usually watch the YouTube, and I just wanted to say that I've seen really the science progress very quickly, as you have, especially since the start of the year. I don't want to make any requests to the town council because a lot of your ordinances and the things you do are coming from the county, especially if it's anything related to the school. But instead, I wanted to come to you today to do what I'm doing now that it's warmer. I'm talking with my neighbors, my brothers and sisters that I see just over the hill. And I just wanted to recommend to you to continue to follow the science, updating science like strong studies with randomized control trials like a Bangladeshi study that shows that these cloth masks work 0%, and that even the surgical masks, which may stop water droplets, are not very effective at stopping aerosolized things that are like 0.1 to 10 microns in size. By the way, a human hair is 100 microns in size. So yeah, just to close, I don't have anything to ask for you, just to do what I've been doing recently and continue to talk to your neighbors. I have been really encouraged at the library and today using the services. I don't know if I've mentioned this, but I have a confession. I'm 500 feet outside the town limits. So in closing, I just wanted to say I come in peace, and thank you for really everything you do. I can see on the YouTube, especially special mention to Mr. Ben Howell is, I don't know, we don't have to discuss his salary, but phenomenal work. Every time, every meeting, every stream, you're definitely getting your money's worth. With that in mind, I'd like to thank the council for your time. I'll step back just for a moment if somebody wanted to make a comment, but thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. Michael Granis, 215 Beaufort Loop, Clayton, 27527. 3 things. You may or may not know that I'm the current president of the Clayton Civitan Club, And obviously, with what's going on at Municipal Park, I've made it a point to be in close contact with various town staff. And when we have functions there, it allows for the possibility of having issues with parking. And I just wanted the council to know, and also especially staff, most notably Joshua and his team, the communication level with respect to what's going on out there has been phenomenal. And we're certainly very grateful for that. It's actually helped facilitate us having a large lacrosse tournament over the weekend. We were able to use the north parking lot of Municipal Park in addition to ours. But wanted the council and staff to know that we're very grateful, and the communication level is very good. The second thing is I got to see the ladder truck actually roll out. I don't think it was on a call this evening, but on my way over here to the council meeting, it was headed out the Front Street extension to 42, and it really looked good. Really looked good. So. The last thing is I wanted to address the UDO rewrite. Although I have a great deal of respect for the comments that Councilwoman Archer made, I think if we only were to include the planning board as the steering committee for the rewrite, that might be a little bit dangerous. My suggestion would be that you certainly include planning board members. But also, I think you would want to consider including community leaders who have a pretty extensive knowledge with respect to the current UDO and also the ordinances. I think that could be beneficial as well. I also believe that it's important, too, to include the stakeholders, which obviously Ben has taken into account. I think that's very important. But if you would especially the staff, consider that as an additional option, I think that would be wise. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? All right. If not, I'll turn it over to council for comments.
Mr. Mayor, just a real quick comment. I just want to let the council know that I had a very productive meeting with Intern Town Manager Rich, and we had a very good discussion on reporting processes, and we talked for about an hour and a half. Went extremely well, and just looking forward to the things we talked about and seeing it come to fruition.
Awesome. All right. Anyone else? Mr. Casey.
Just real quick, Miss Peach, you have a phenomenal art studio there. I've been there several times. It's great. Just please work with the town staff. Hopefully they'll be able to help you out. Okay.
All right. Anyone else? All right. If not, I will entertain a motion for council to go into closed session.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Motion to go back into regular session.
Motion to go back into regular session.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, is there any business, anything else come before this council? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Good night.